Chapter 926. Chen Jinchuan's words just now made everyone even more puzzled. Why did Chen Jinchuan keep denying that he wasn't the one who banned Beiguang Model Agency? Just as everyone was thinking this, Yun Jian's sudden words shocked everyone, especially Qi Jinqing himself. Qi Jinqing didn't know who banned his Beiguang Model Agency. Qi Jinqing admitted that Beiguang Model Agency was his life's work. If it was destroyed because he offended someone important, his life would be ruined. However, the only person he could think of was Chen Jinchuan. But why would Chen Jinchuan deny that he was the one who banned Beiguang Model Agency? Instead, this little girl who was still wet behind her ears stood up and said, "I said that Beiguang Model Agency will become history. Who told you to offend someone you shouldn't?" To be honest, Qi Jinqing was also shocked. Why would this little girl stand up and say something like that? "Who are you?" Qi Jinqing asked, but he was still kneeling in front of Chen Jinchuan. After all, in Qi Jinqing's subconscious mind, Yun Jian who suddenly appeared was just a little kid. If there was anyone who had the ability to ban Beiguang Model Agency, other than Chen Jinchuan, there was no one else. Just as Qi Jinqing opened his mouth to ask Yun Jian, everyone turned to look at her. However, Yun Jian suddenly crossed her arms and sneered. Just as everyone felt the temperature drop, Yun Jian's voice rang out again. "Didn't you want to beg me to let your company go? What? You can't even ask for help from the wrong person, and you still want to protect your company?" Yun Jian crossed her arms and nodded with a smile. Her tone was full of provocation and contempt. Everyone present couldn't help but gasp when they heard these words. You did it? You're the one who blacklisted Beiguang Model Agency?" Qi Jinqing looked at Yun Jian in disbelief. Similarly, everyone looked at Yun Jian in shock. How could it be Yun Jian? Who did she think she was? Did she have the ability to ban Beiguang Model Agency? Qi Jinqing was not the only one who did not believe Yun Jian. Not many people there believed what she said. Ce who stood on the side blinked, a slight smirk on his handsome face. He did not make a move because he knew that his Xiao Jian had her own solution. "Huh? Can you stop joking? Girl, I've been hearing you say that you're the one behind Beiguang Model Agency's incident and those scouts who lost their manhood. Can't you show me some evidence? Can't you stop making so much trouble? Who do you think you are? Do you think you're up to the heavens?" It was not Zhang Guodong's first time hearing Yun Jian admit that she was the one who did it, so he was annoyed, and was even more annoyed by what she said now. "Just a girl's 8. S is the SSS A's have. You're asking who S is?" Corentin pointed at Yun Jian exaggeratedly before continuing in an even more exaggerated tone. "What's this Beiguang special agency you're talking about? Do you know Rongyao Company, one of the top 10 international corporations?" Chapter 927. Rongyao Company was one of the top 10 international multinational companies, and it enjoyed absolute power in the entire world. Even among the top 10 international multinational companies, Rongyao Company was at the top. Countless international businessmen and politicians were proud to be able to cooperate with Rongyao Company. The countless business elites, or top students who graduated from major universities all over the world, and the top students among the top students, all fought to squeeze into Rongyao Company. Rongyao Company was in existence with absolute influence in the world. It was also Yun Jian's power in her previous life, and it was now under the control of Siren. When Yun Jian had just been reborn into the body of the original owner, the first time she went to an internet cafe after being reborn, she used hacking skills to invade Rongyao Company's system and stole a large sum of money from it. Stealing money from oneself. Wasn't it referring to people like Yun Jian? Because the person in charge of Rongyao Company was Siren. Siren was Yun Jian's subordinate, and she was in charge of Rongyao Company for Yun Jian. Yun Jian herself was the boss of Rongyao Company, which meant that the founder of Rongyao Company was Yun Jian. The people present might not have heard of Country M's top mechanic, Corentin, but it was impossible for them not to have heard of Rongyao Company, one of the top 10 international multinational companies. It was an internationally famous company. Therefore, when everyone present heard Corentin's words, they all maintained their original stupefied actions and froze in place. That look was no different from a person who had been scared silly. Corentin spoke in Chinese just now, so everyone present could understand. But what did Corentin just say? Yun Jian was the boss of Rongyao Company, one of the top 10 international multinational companies? What kind of joke was this? How old was she? She was still underage, okay? She was about the same age as Chinsini and was still a junior high school student. Everyone present was completely stunned. At the same time, everyone kept their mouths in the shape of an O. It was as if they were shocked by something and were completely unable to move. The existence of Rongyao Company, whether it was Baiguang Model Agency or Qinjianchuan's company, was not even qualified to touch the Rongyao Company. It could be said that if Rong and Yao wanted to destroy Baiguang Model Agency or Qinjianchuan's company, it would only take a phone call. Not to mention that the CEO of Rongyao Company had made a move. Most of the people present believed Corentin's words. Furthermore, Corentin's respect for Yun Jian and his insistence on becoming Yun Jian's disciple were all sorts of things. It could be concluded that if Yun Jian was not the CEO of Rongyao Company, why would the internationally renowned mechanic, Mr. Corentin, fly a helicopter all the way from Country M to become her disciple? However, after receiving this answer, everyone was unable to react for a while. Everyone was stunned, especially Ji Shasha, who wanted to compare herself with Yun Jian, and Zhang Guodong, who verbally attacked Yun Jian. Both of their faces were pale, as if they had seen a ghost. However, before everyone could react, Zhang Xiaofeng's incredulous voice rang in everyone's ears again. Oh my God, Master, you're the CEO of Rongyao Company? Then, what about New Cruise? Aren't you the CEO of New Cruise? Zhang Xiaofeng's voice was very loud and clear, and it spread all over the place. However, when everyone heard Zhang Xiaofeng's voice, their expressions tensed up again.
What?
Chapter 928. Zhang Xiaofeng, Ling Yichen, and Chinsini had been learning from Zhang Jifan, who was managing New Cruise on behalf of Yun Jian for a long time now. Zhang Xiaofeng, Ling Yichen, and Ling Yichen would learn about managing a company from Zhang Jifan whenever it was time. They had heard a lot about Yun Jian from Zhang Jifan. How did Yun Jian lead Zhang Jifan and the rest from Xinjiang town to Longmen City back then? How did she take over New Cruise's storefront? How did she develop New Cruise to this stage? Zhang Xiaofeng had heard a lot about these from Zhang Jifan and was extremely impressed with Yun Jian back then. Now that he heard that Yun Jian was actually the boss of Rongyao Company, one of the top 10 international corporations, Zhang Xiaofeng nearly fainted from shock. It was because Yun Jian was the boss of New Cruise. She was so young, but she had done things that others could not achieve in their entire lives even when they were older. Although everyone present believed that Yun Jian was the boss of Rongyao Company and the director of New Cruise after listening to Corentin and Zhang Xiaofeng, they were still waiting for Yun Jian's answer. Therefore, they shifted their gaze to Yun Jian, waiting for her reaction. Yun Jian's gaze was trained on Zhang Xiaofeng. She pressed her lips together, her red lips curling up slightly. After a while, Yun Jian spoke. That's right. Rongyao Company and New Cruise are mine. She was not afraid of publicity. Of course, so what if she did not admit it? Corentin, the old man, and Zhang Xiaofeng, the young man, had already revealed it. Corentin, the old man, and Zhang Xiaofeng snickered when they saw Yun Jian admit it. Those who stood around, including Ling Yichen and Chinsini, Qin Jinchuan and his wife Hixia, Zhang Guodong, and even Ji Shasha, were all shocked. Not a single one of them was not surprised. At this moment, everyone's expression was the same. Of course, C.E. was the exception. C.E. was silent, watching the scene before her nonchalantly. So, Baiguang Model Agency is really you? Zhang Guodong was so regretful that his intestines were about to turn green. Once he recalled how he had treated Yun Jian just now, he shuddered in fear. Now that he had thought it through, he knew the truth. Yun Jian was New Cruise's director. However, no matter how regretful Zhang Guodong was, he dared not talk to Yun Jian. This was because Zhang Guodong knew that if he spoke to Yun Jian now, he would definitely die a horrible death. Just by looking at how Chinsini was hurt by Baiguang Model Agency's talent scout and how Yun Jian had blacklisted Baiguang Model Agency, it was obvious that she was not a pushover. Considering the previous incident, no one present dared to talk to Yun Jian. In the end, no one dared to speak up until Yun Jian bade farewell to Chinsini and the rest and returned home with Corentin and Si. At this moment, Yun Jian had left the group of stunned people behind. However, Yun Jian did not return to Dong Ruan's house. Instead, she went straight to Go Yunjian's house. This was because Yun Jian knew that Qin Yuru was at Go Yunjian's house. However, she had a more important matter to attend to. Just as she arrived at the entrance of Go Yunjian's house, Yun Jian saw a rather tall Go Xian with a red, yellow, blue, and green hairstyle standing at the entrance and looking into the distance. She did not know what he was looking at. Go Xian only reacted when he saw Yun Jian and the other two approaching. Go Xian looked at Yun Jian. Just as he was about to shout, he walked around Yun Jian and saw Corentin behind Yun Jian. Mr. Corentin! Go Xian exclaimed in shock when he saw the person clearly. Then, he shifted his gaze to Yun Jian. The shock in his heart could not be described with words. Yun Jian actually managed to invite Mr. Corentin here. Chapter 929. Go Xian had always thought that Yun Jian's request for Corentin to remodel a Maserati sports car was just a joke from Yun Jian. Go Xian had even forgotten about Yun Jian's claim that she knew how to remodel a sports car. After all, Yun Jian was so young. Perhaps due to her youthful vigor, Go Xian did not take her words seriously. However, at this very moment, when Go Xian saw Corentin following Yun Jian in the direction of home, he was completely dumbfounded. Hey. Hello, young man. Just as Go Xian looked at Corentin in surprise and shouted, Corentin was as lively as an old urchin. Instead, he took the lead and extended his hand to greet Go Xian. Mr. Corentin, hello. Go Xian was overwhelmed by the unexpected favor. He actually saw Corentin. Mr. Corentin was one of the top machinists in the world. Not to mention inviting Mr. Corentin all the way from Country M. Even if the son of a famous international figure went to Corentin's house, Corentin would not even bother with them. Not to mention helping someone remodel a sports car. That was something that did not exist at all. Therefore, the moment Go Xian saw Corentin, he was beyond shocked. Astonishment and fear were just words to describe it. It was as though he had seen his idol. Go Xian was completely stunned on the spot, unable to react. Old man, it shouldn't be difficult to remodel a Maserati sports car for my brother, right? Yun Jian walked beside Si. She held Si's arm and turned her head to speak to Corentin. Go Xian almost shouted in surprise when he heard Yun Jian call Corentin old man. What kind of person was Corentin? Even in the entire international scene, he was one of the top existences. Countless people in the underworld only dared to address Corentin respectfully as Mr. or Master. But what about Yun Jian? She actually called Corentin an old man? Go Xian also noticed that Yun Jian actually called him brother? Go Xian suddenly felt the warmth of family love. Just a Maserati? How could that do? Tomorrow, I'll ask my assistant to send over the newly modified limited edition Bugatti Veyron from my warehouse. Corentin said generously. He looked like he was willing to do anything as long as Yun Jian was willing to accept him as a disciple. When Go Xian heard this, his entire face froze. Was Mr. Corentin not said to be a very odd man? Go Xian had seen Corentin's photo and brief introduction in some international newspapers before. According to the introduction, Corentin was a very eccentric person. But then again, who was like Corentin, who would modify a car based on his mood even if you gave him money? But why was the rumored crafty and mean Corentin so obedient in front of Yun Jian? After all, he followed behind Yun Jian and said that it wasn't enough to modify a Maserati. He even rushed to send over the latest model of car that he had modified. Go Xian was stunned, but at this moment, he was very grateful to Yun Jian. He could finally own a new car that Mr. Corentin had specially modified. And it was a new car. Just as Go Xian smiled comfortably, Corentin's voice sounded again. So, will you accept me as your disciple? If you accept me as your disciple, I'll send you all the cars in my laboratory. You can even take all my medals. I'll give you anything you want. Corentin pestered Yun Jian. However, after hearing Corentin's words, Gu Xian's smile instantly froze. The Mr. Corentin that he worshipped was actually begging to be Yun Jian's disciple. Chapter 930. This was Mr. Corentin. He was willing to exchange all his honor for Yun Jian to accept him as her disciple. Gu Xian was completely dumbfounded. He stood rooted to the ground in a daze. He thought that Yun Jian would definitely agree to Corentin's request. In the end, Yun Jian directly rejected Corentin.
No.
Gu Xian was stunned. He thought that a big shot like Corentin would definitely be infuriated by Yun Jian's rejection. As a matter of fact, Corentin was fuming as well. Just as he did so, Gu Xian saw him shaking his buttocks and looking at Yun Jian like an innocent child, exhaling and saying, "I'm sorry, but I'm sorry, I'm sorry. No, no, no. Accept me. I'll be very obedient. I'll even run errands for you. I'll do anything." Corentin's behavior gave Gu Xian goosebumps all over. An old man with one foot in the grave was shaking his buttocks and acting coquettishly in front of a young man. Just the thought of this scene sent shivers down one's spine. Corentin shook his buttocks and tried to reach out to grab Yun Jian's arm to further act coquettishly. Just as Corentin's hand reached out, and before he could touch Yun Jian's arm, it was caught by an even more slender and well-defined hand. "Seas clear," mellow male voice sounded resolutely. "Don't touch her." Other than him, he wouldn't allow any other person of the opposite sex to touch Yun Jian. Not even an old person of the opposite sex. Corentin was 9 meters tall, which made him slightly taller than Ce. However, in front of Ce, Corentin's aura was completely lost. Ce was 85 meters tall, but in front of Ce, even if Corentin was slightly taller than Ce, he was no match for Ce. Therefore, in front of Ce, Corentin's aura was much lower. Corentin was even forced to lower his head by Ce's aura. Corentin, even involuntarily, withdrew his hand. Looking at this scene, Gu Xian's jaw almost dropped to the ground. In the end, they returned to Gu Yunjian's house amidst Qin Yuru's shouts. Because it was already very late, Qin Yuru tidied up Gu Yunjian's house chores. Then, she gave some instructions to Gu Xian before returning home with Yun Jian and the others. Yun Jian asked Corentin to arrange his own accommodations, and Gu Xian invited Corentin to stay at his place. Therefore, Corentin could be considered to be staying at Gu Xian's house. The next day was Sunday. As promised, Yun Jian had to study at night. When it was time for the evening's self-study session, Zhang Xiaofeng had already returned to school. Zhang Xiaofeng had only applied for a week's leave, but Chen Sini would only be back after about a month. The following week passed by uneventfully. Yun Jian had been paying attention in class this week. She even completed the homework assigned by the teacher seriously. It was common for Yun Jian not to do her homework. Now that she had completed her homework and handed it in, the teachers in the office were extremely surprised. A week passed by quickly. In the blink of an eye, it was the day of the Qingming Festival holiday. The Qingming Festival was one of the most important traditional festivals in Country Z. Therefore, most schools would have a 3-day holiday. This Thursday was the Qingming Festival, so school was dismissed on Wednesday afternoon. However, Yun Jian's school had to start their evening self-study session on Saturday night. On Wednesday of this week, Yun Jian, Zhang Xiaofeng, and Zhang Jian carried their school bags and walked out of the school gate. As soon as she walked out of the school gate, she saw Gu Xian standing across the road and waving at her. Chapter 931. Gu Xian had taken a long leave of absence this time. He would still return to study abroad after this, but he could stay at home for the next few days. Corentin's arrival especially made Gu Xian even more reluctant to return to school early. Moreover, ever since Yun Jian brought Corentin to Gu Xian that night, Gu Xian had been addressing Yun Jian as little sister. Although Gu Xian and Yun Jian were not blood-related at all, Yun Jian could tell that Gu Xian truly treated her as a little sister. Gu Xian was Gu Yunjian's biological son. Since Gu Xian could turn for the better, it meant that Qin Yiru could get along better with Gu Junjian after marrying Gu Junjian. In that case, why wouldn't Yun Jian be happy? Go. Yun Jian nodded. Then, she paused and said, I might be a little late tonight. You guys go ahead first. She had promised Ning Lanlan that she would go shopping tonight. Ning Lanlan was a student of foreign languages high school. However, Ning Lanlan was lively by nature. If it were other girls, they would have parted ways long ago after becoming friends with Yun Jian because they were not from the same school. However, Ning Lanlan would still look for Yun Jian when she was free. When they went to Nilong River for a barbecue last time, Ning Lanlan came to borrow salt. This time, she lent a friend. Yun Jian also felt that she got along well with Ning Lanlan, so she did not refuse to go out with Ning Lanlan. Okay. Gu Xian was overjoyed when he heard that Yun Jian would be coming. How could he refuse? Hence, he agreed immediately. The more Gu Xian looked at Yun Jian, the more he liked his new little sister. Even Qin Yiru was pleasing to the eye. If Gu Xian was a little repulsed by Yun Jian and Qin Yiru's existence in the beginning, Gu Xian truly treated Yun Jian and Qin Yiru as his family from the bottom of his heart now. Gu Xian had come to the school to inform Yun Jian and was urged by his friend to drive to the only racing track in Longmen City right after he said that. Those who loved racing could naturally find a dedicated racetrack. Gu Xian had stayed in Longmen City for 2 days and was bored out of his wits when he could not touch a race car, so he went to Longmen City's racetrack. After Gu Xian left, Yun Jian went back to Dong Ruan's house and left her bag there before running out. Si had not returned from Anhun. In the downtown area of Longmen City, Yun Jian met up with Ning Lanlan. Jian, you're here. Ning Lanlan was thrilled when she saw Yun Jian and hooked her arm around Yun Jian's. Come, let's walk around there. Ning Lanlan came to look for Yun Jian alone. She did not have any friends with her. Yun Jian nodded. There were quite a lot of downtown areas in Longmen City. Ning Lanlan dragged Yun Jian to wander around. When they passed by a mall just now, something black and flesh-colored flashed across their eyes. Wow, Jian, let's go check it out. Ning Lanlan pointed at a lingerie shop in the mall and ran in with Yun Jian in tow. Welcome. The attendant in the lingerie shop smiled at Ning Lanlan and Yun Jian in a friendly manner, looking like she wanted to follow them to introduce her store's products. We're just walking around on our own. You don't have to follow us. Ning Lanlan waved at the attendant. The attendant flashed her a friendly smile as well. When Ning Lanlan saw that the attendant really did not follow them, she pulled Yun Jian to a corner of the lingerie shop playfully. When Ning Lanlan saw that there was no one around, she picked out a piece that was so thin that it was almost transparent from the row of lingerie and stuffed it into Yun Jian's arms. Chapter 932. When Yun Jian was first brought into the lingerie shop by Ning Lanlan, she was still rather surprised. Why did shopping turn into a lingerie shop? It was only now that Yun Jian realized what was going on. This was what Ning Lanlan had in mind. She wanted her to buy sexy lingerie. After becoming friends with Ning Lanlan, the latter had been visiting her almost every day for the past week. Although school ended late, Ning Lanlan did not miss a single day. As long as CE was in Longmen City at night, he would come to her school to pick her up. It was not Ning Lanlan's first time seeing CE. Yun Jian did not think much about it before, but what was going on now? Ning Lanlan was hinting that she should wear this thin and transparent sexy lingerie to CE. Yun Jian felt that if she really did that, she might really be. What are you thinking about? Yun Jian said, and shoved the sexy lingerie back onto the rack. Once Yun Jian thought about wearing this thin piece of clothing that looked no different from wearing nothing in front of C. Was she crazy? How could she be thinking about something like that? If the people around them took a closer look, they would be able to see that Yun Jian's cheeks were flushed with a faint blush. Buy it. Buy it. Ning Lanlan pulled Yun Jian's hand and shook it before running to the front desk with the lingerie that was hung back on the rack.
I'll pay.
Haha. Ning Lanlan paid before Yun Jian could reject her. The receptionist at the front desk looked at Ning Lanlan and Yun Jian with an odd gaze, but settled the bill for Ning Lanlan in the end. In the end, Even Yun Jian did not know how she ended up with the lingerie that Ning Lanlan bought. Ning Lanlan played with Yun Jian until 6 or 7 in the evening before she checked the time and was ready to go home. Before she left, Ning Lanlan stole a glance at Yun Jian and said with a grin, "Jian Jian, you must wear it."
Ha ha ha. Try to pounce on him.
"You have to tell me how it feels when you're done."
Ha ha.
Ning Lanlan chuckled exaggeratedly and ran 2 steps away from Yun Jian while waving the bag in her hand. 2 steps later, Ning Lanlan remembered that she still had something to tell Yun Jian, so she skipped back to her again. "Jian Jian, I forgot to tell you. I'm going to the zoo for a spring outing with my friends tomorrow morning. If you're free, do you want to come with us?"
How about it?
Lanlan asked and winked at Yun Jian. Ning Lanlan's invitation was sincere. Before Yun Jian could answer, Ning Lanlan agreed on her behalf skillfully. "I'll take that as a yes then. You must come. We'll meet at the usual place." With that, Ning Lanlan skipped away without giving Yun Jian a chance to reject her. Yun Jian did not have anything to do the next morning. She stood where she was and watched Ning Lanlan skipping away. It was only when Ning Lanlan was out of sight that Yun Jian turned to go home. Holding the sexy lingerie in her hand, she felt a burning sensation in her hand. Of course, she had to put it back home first. Just as she stepped into the house, she was greeted by Qin Yiru. Yun Jian called out, "Mom." Xiao Jian, have you eaten? I've put it in the pot for you. Go eat," Qin Yiru said and suddenly saw the big black bag in Yun Jian's hand. Chapter 933. As Qin Yiru spoke, she habitually walked over and reached out to take the big black bag from Yun Jian's hands. Usually, when Yun Jian bought clothes, Qin Yiru would take the big bag that Yun Jian brought back from shopping to have a look. Sometimes, she would also touch the fabric to see if it was durable or not. People of the parents' generation had a hard time when they were young, especially Qin Yiru. Even though the family was rich now and bought clothes and other things, Qin Yiru still habitually reached out to touch the quality of the clothes, to see how long they could last, and to feel the texture of the clothes to see if they would pilling. Therefore, when she saw Yun Jian come back with the big black bag, Qin Yiru habitually thought that Yun Jian bought clothes. She also habitually reached out to take the big bag from Yun Jian's hands, and then poured out the clothes inside to have a look. If it was in the past, Yun Jian would definitely reach out the bag to Qin Yiru. However, the clothes in the bag were not normal clothes. How could she pass the clothes to Qin Yiru? If Qin Yiru saw the things in the bag, how could she explain it? "Ahem, Mom, I just promised Guxian that I would go play with him. I will put the things upstairs first." As Yun Jian spoke, she carried the big black bag and ran upstairs as fast as she could. "This child, why are you running so fast? Mom is not the plague." Qin Yiru smiled with relief. From her expression, it could be seen that Qin Yiru did not suspect anything. After a while, Yun Jian came downstairs, but Yun Jian did not have the big black bag in her hands. Qin Yiru naturally did not suspect anything. "Mom, I'm going out," Yun Jian said, and left the place. "Hey, you have to worry about yourself going out in the middle of the night," Qin Yiru called after her. The night wind was chilly. Just as Yun Jian stepped out of the house, she felt a gust of cold wind. Yun Jian pulled her clothes together, not looking that cold. Longmen City, Yuanbao Mountain. Yuanbao Mountain was a racing track by the cliff of Longmen City. There were many racing tracks in Longmen City, and Yuanbao Mountain was not necessarily the best one. However, Yuanbao Mountain was definitely the steepest mountain. The reason why countless racers chose to race at Ingot Mountain was because racing at Ingot Mountain was steep and exciting enough. Yuanbao Mountain was not filled with Yuanbao like its name, but it was undoubtedly one of the steepest mountains in Longmen City. What was racing? Wasn't the game just exciting? It was 7:30 in the evening, but the steep cliffs of Yuanbao Mountain were illuminated by bright lights. The racer's race was just the racer's race. Guxian was still standing where he was, checking his racing car with his 2 friends to see if it was fully equipped. This Maserati was recently remodeled by Corentin. Guxian was here today to see if this Maserati was good or not. "Xian, it'll be our turn soon," one of Gu Xian's 2 friends said to Gu Xian. Gu Xian had brought 3 friends home this time. One of them was Xin Jie, who was hospitalized after being beaten up by Yun Jian. The other 2 were not bad. Gu Xian nodded and put on his helmet. Just as he put on his helmet, a group of people who looked more like hooligans than Gu Xian surrounded Gu Xian and his friends. The hooligan who stood at the front had a scar on his face, adding to his ferocity. Chapter 934. Gu Xian himself had dyed his hair red, yellow, blue, and green. He looked no different from a local ruffian. His red, yellow, blue, and green hair made Gu Xian look like a gangster. Therefore, when these gangsters surrounded Gu Xian, they treated Gu Xian as one of their own, but from a different faction. When people of the same trade met each other, they would usually treat each other like enemies. Therefore, these gangsters who surrounded Gu Xian looked ferocious. One of Gu Xian's 2 friends was a foreigner while the other was from Country Z, including Gu Xian himself. There were only 3 of them. Gu Xian's eyelids twitched when he was surrounded by these people. The gangster who stood at the front had a scar on his face and a crew cut. He looked strange as well. Standing in front of Gu Xian, he was much shorter than Gu Xian. It was probably because he could only see Gu Xian's chin when he raised his head. This made the gangster with a scar on his face and a crew cut very dissatisfied. F***CK. How dare you look down on me? Do you know who I am? Do you know Falcon Hall in Longmen City? My big brother is one of the higher-ups in Falcon Hall. Who the F***CK do you think you are? How dare you look down on me? Men, beat him until he's on his knees. The crew-cut hooligan opened his mouth very arrogantly to show off his power. We're new here and don't know the ways of the world. Please bear with us. Gu Xian was smart enough to speak up when he thought of this. If they were overseas, Gu Xian would have formed many gangs, but there were only 3 of them who came back this time. The best fighter, Xin Jie, had already been sent to the hospital by Yun Jian.
There were only 3 of them left now.
Gu Xian knew that it was useless to put on a brave front, so the best thing to do now was to make peace with these people who were obviously here to cause trouble. At least you have a good eye. The crew-cut man sneered at Gu Xian. He looked up at Gu Xian, spitting saliva all over Gu Xian's face. Gu Xian knew that the other party had the advantage in numbers, so he could only swallow his resentment. Next match, You're going to compete with our brother Guang, aren't you? The crew-cut man finally got down to business. Before Gu Xian could say anything, the crew-cut man continued, If you dare win our brother Guang in that match, don't think about leaving this place today. I'll make sure you won't be able to come back alive. The crew-cut guy threatened fiercely. As he spoke, the man with the crew-cut walked around Gu Xian and stopped in front of the Maserati. The crew-cut guy led a group of people to the front of the Maserati. He patted the sports car and said even more arrogantly, Yo, this car's not bad, right? Lend it to our brother Guang, how about it? He did not allow the other party to refute him. Gu Xian clenched his fists. He could not hold it in any longer. Screech. At this moment, a fiery red limited edition Ferrari sports car suddenly rushed up from the bottom of the hill. The sports car was like a gust of wind. Its speed was maximized, and it arrived in front of the crowd at lightning speed. The crew-cut man and the others were stunned. Even Gu Xian was shocked. Whose car was this? How could it be so fast? It was twice as fast as Mr. Corentin's modified Maserati. In other words, it was 4 times better than an ordinary sports car. Gu Xian was also shocked. However, at this moment, the door of the Ferrari sports car opened and Yun Jian stepped out of the car. She turned off the listening device installed in the Maserati sports car to eavesdrop on the conversation between Gu Xian and the hooligans. As soon as she got out of the car, Yun Jian leaned lazily against the side of the Ferrari sports car. Looking at the hooligans, her eyes instantly turned cold. Chapter 935. From Yun Jian's appearance to Yun Jian's words to protect him, Gu Xian's heart was beating wildly. This was different from love and friendship. This was a form of protection from family. Gu Xian was not afraid to admit that at this moment, he felt tears welling up in his eyes. It felt as if his heart was suddenly hit by a warm wind. Gu Xian had never experienced such a feeling before. His eyes could not help but turn red. Even his biological mother had never protected him like this. Today, Yun Jian, his sister who is not related to him by blood, actually stood out to protect him. Because he was momentarily moved, Gu Xian did not even notice that Yun Jian had said, "My Falcon Hall." Because Yun Jian was young, the crew cut guy, and the rest did not even notice that Yun Jian had said, "My Falcon Hall." However, it was undeniable that Yun Jian's speed had indeed shocked the crew cut guy and the rest for a while. However, when they thought about it and saw Yun Jian's delicate and beautiful face, the crew cut guy and the rest suddenly relaxed. Yo, where did this little girl come from? Why is she so pretty? The crew cut guy whistled, then led his group of hooligans to Yun Jian's side and surrounded Yun Jian. What are you doing? Seeing this, Gu Xian forgot about his initial intention of showing weakness. Although it was obvious that Yun Jian was very skilled when she beat up Xinjie, Gu Xian only treated Yun Jian as a younger sister who should be protected. Gu Xian quickly rushed in front of Yun Jian and blocked the crew cut guy and the rest. Haha, kid, do you have a death wish? The crew cut guy cackled when he saw Gu Xian shielding Yun Jian. These hooligans were notorious in Longmen City. They liked to tease pretty girls when they saw them and take them away by force when they got the chance. It was even common for them to rape a girl together. In spite of this, they were from Falcon Hall, and the boss the crew cut guy mentioned was a higher-up in Falcon Hall. Therefore, no one dared to stop them even when they were stirring up trouble. Clenching his fists, Gu Xian gritted his teeth and said, "You guys can take the car. Mr. Quarantin modified it." Gu Xian loved the Maserati sports car that Quarantin had modified, to the point that he loved it as much as his own life. If Yun Jian had not shown up today, Gu Xian would not have handed over the car even if he had to fight these hooligans to the death. After all, Gu Xian's love for this Maserati exceeded his love for his own life because it was Quarantin who had personally modified it. However, Yun Jian had shown up today. Looking at the crew cut guy and his gang, Gu Xian knew that they looked at Yun Jian differently. Yun Jian was skilled and had even entered her father's military training camp. However, no matter how good Yun Jian was, she was only a girl. There were about a dozen people in the crew cut guy's gang. How could they possibly be a match for them? Therefore, Gu Xian reluctantly gave up the car and would rather have the crew cut guy drive the Maserati away to divert their attention from Yun Jian before leaving with Yun Jian. In short, the crew cut guy and his gang must not turn their attention to Yun Jian. Yo, kid, you actually have a sports car modified by Mr. Quarantin? The crew cut guy jumped in surprise and went to touch the Maserati. Chapter 936. The crew cut guy did temporarily shift his gaze from Yun Jian to the Maserati, but it was only temporary. How could the crew cut guy let go of a girl's looks when they had taken a fancy to her? Sister, what are you talking about? Gu Xian was shocked by Yun Jian's words. He quickly turned to the side and whispered to Yun Jian in the softest voice. Gu Xian had learned a lot of martial arts, but he knew that he was no match for the crew cut guy, who was originally a hooligan and was good at fighting. He had not reached the level where he could take on more than 10 people. Moreover, a great man knew when to yield and when to stand tall. Originally, Gu Xian did not intend to tolerate being insulted to this extent. However, he had to tolerate it now. He still had Yun Jian on his side. Moreover, wasn't it all because of Yun Jian that Mr. Quarantin could modify the Maserati sports car? Just based on this point, Gu Xian would protect Yun Jian at all costs. It was because he was Yun Jian's brother now too. However, while Gu Xian was doing this, the crew cut guy finally reacted to Yun Jian's words. Sika. How dare you say that my hands are dirty? The crew cut guy raised his voice. From the sudden ferocious expression on his face, it could be seen that he was really angry. Isn't it? Don't tell me you sprayed perfume on your hands? Yun Jian did not mince her words at all. She then added, even if you sprayed perfume, your hands are still dirty.
Puffed.
Just as Yun Jian finished speaking, Gu Xian's other brother, who was standing beside him, could not help but laugh out loud. Seeing Yun Jian's serious look and suddenly hearing Yun Jian's black-bellied words, Gu Xian's brother could not help but laugh out loud. *CK. Hearing what Yun Jian and Gu Xian said, the flat-top guy got even angrier. *Teach, I'm going to kill you. The man with the crew cut said. He raised his hand and wanted to rush over to give Yun Jian a slap. However, before he could raise his hand, a hooligan with a crew cut ran out from the side of the path. Just as the crew cut guy was about to slap Yun Jian, the hooligan pulled him back. He even whispered a few words into the crew cut guy's ear. Just as he said a few words, the crew cut man's expression changed. *CK, count yourselves lucky. Kid, if you dare to beat my brother Guang later, you're dead meat. The crew cut guy didn't forget to say these words before he left. After that, the crew cut guy said to his brothers, "Let's go." With that, the group of people swaggered out of the place. Yun Jian didn't stop her. In spite of it, Yun Jian's gaze darkened. Since when did her Falcon Hall have such a piece of trash? Haha, it seemed like she had to get rid of them completely. Sister, are you okay? Once the crew cut guy and his gang left, Gu Xian was afraid that Yun Jian would be frightened, so he turned to look at Yun Jian. Yun Jian shook her head slightly. Then, she walked to her Ferrari and knocked on the hood of the Ferrari. She turned to Gu Xian and said, "Do you want to try this car of mine? It's twice as fast as Quarantine's modified Maserati sports car." "Twice as fast?" Gu Xian exclaimed in surprise. After all, Quarantine's modified Maserati sports car was already shocking enough. However, he had seen Yun Jian's speed just now. Thinking of this, Gu Xian couldn't help but ask, which master modified this car? Who modified this car to be twice as fast as Master Quarantine's modified car? Chapter 937. Hearing Yun Jian say that the car was modified by her in such a situation, she was stunned. At this moment, Gu Xian did not think that Yun Jian was lying at all. Yun Jian saw that Gu Xian did not say anything. She pursed her lips and smiled. "You don't believe me? I believe you." This time it was Gu Xian who spoke with conviction. He really believed her. Yun Jian could invite Mr. Quarantine here and even make him beg to be Yun Jian's disciple. What other reason could there be? There was no other reason except that Yun Jian had more advanced mechanical skills than Mr. Quarantine. Yun Jian pursed her lips and smiled. Then she patted her Ferrari sports car and finally said to Gu Xian, "Go ahead. Don't worry about winning the race. With me around, those people won't dare to do anything to you." Gu Xian felt a warmth in his heart when he heard Yun Jian's words. It felt like he was being protected by a family member. Even though Gu Xian thought that Yun Jian was lying when she said that she could help him win the race without worry, Gu Xian was satisfied because he also experienced the feeling of family. "Okay." Gu Xian nodded heavily at Yun Jian. Then he took the car keys from Yun Jian, got into Yun Jian's Ferrari sports car, and watched it go to the racetrack. Racing was Gu Xian's hobby, so he naturally would not be intimidated by the crew cut guys group. Even though Gu Xian had lowered his head just now, it did not mean that he would give in to Brother Guang on the racetrack. He would definitely win today's race. As she watched Ji Xian drive away, Yun Jian suddenly crossed her arms. She turned her head and glanced at the two Gu Xian buddies who were still standing there. "You're not leaving?" Yun Jian took 2 steps towards the edge of the racetrack. Then she turned her head to look at the two people. "Leave? Where are we going?" Gu Xian's 2 buddies looked honest and considerate. One of them was a foreigner, and the other was from Country Z. Perhaps it was because they had seen Yun Jian's strength before, so when they saw Yun Jian, they stood respectfully. "Let's go to the starting point of the racetrack to watch the race," Yun Jian said as she led the way to the starting point of the racetrack. The 2 men from Gu Xian were stunned. In the end, they followed Yun Jian to the starting point of the racetrack. Many people had gathered at the starting point of the racetrack. Yuanbao Mountain had specially set up a spectator stand to allow those who were interested in racing to watch the race. Of course, there were many large screens hanging in front of the spectator stands. These screens showed the steep and winding mountain range of Yuanbao Mountain. Yuanbao Mountain's competition points were specially managed by the organizers. On the winding mountain range of Yuanbao Mountain, there were surveillance cameras set up at every point. And these surveillance cameras captured the racers' paths, which would be reflected on the large screens in front of the spectator stands. As long as one sat on the spectator stands, they would be able to see the entire race. Where are you going? Seeing that Yun Jian did not walk to the spectator stands, one of the two men from Guxian, who was from Country Z, could not help but ask. I'm going to place a bet. Yun Jian pursed her lips and smiled. Then Yun Jian's figure flashed. Not long after, she arrived at the place where bets were placed. Racing was an exciting and fun game. However, there were also betting stations set up at the racetrack. In other words, for one-on-one racing, those who did not participate in the race could come here to place a bet on which side would win. If the side who bet won, then they would receive the corresponding compensation. Chapter 938. Seeing Yun Jian walk over to the betting station, Guxian's two buddies hesitated for a moment before following her. At this moment, the betting station was already full of people. Other than watching the racing competition, most people would choose to come here to place their bets. Everyone liked these kinds of exciting bets, but the people standing at the betting station were all men without exception. Generally, women wouldn't come here to place their bets, so the people standing at the betting station were all men. So when Yun Jian walked over, she became the focus of everyone's attention. Because just by looking at Yun Jian's appearance, one could tell that she was young. Everyone present could tell at a glance that Yun Jian was underage. Hey, little girl, are you here to place your bets too? Why don't you go home early and come here to place your bets?
This is what adults do.
Go away, go play somewhere else. Seeing Yun Jian walking over, one of the men who was waiting in line to place his bets waved at Yun Jian. This man was probably bored, so when he saw Yun Jian walking over, he wanted to tease her. It was a good opportunity for the people around to see that an underage girl actually came here to place her bets. Hearing the man's voice, the people around turned to look at Yun Jian. Even the manager of the betting station couldn't help but step forward to persuade Yun Jian when he saw her. Little girl, the viewing platform is over there. You've gone to the wrong place. Upon hearing the manager's words, the surrounding group of people also retracted their gazes. If this little girl had gone to the wrong place, then it would be fine. But if such a young girl really came here to place her bets, then it would be scary. Just as the people around thought of this, Yun Jian had already arrived in front of the betting station. The people who had just looked away couldn't help but look at Yun Jian again, and at this time, they were all shocked. Could this underage girl really be here to place her bets? However, just as everyone present was thinking this, Yun Jian moved her red lips and smiled indifferently. Place your bets. As Yun Jian spoke, she took out a bank card from her pocket and gently placed it on the betting table. As soon as they heard that Yun Jian wanted to place a bet, the surrounding people didn't care about Yun Jian cutting the queue at all. What was wrong with this world? Even underage girls came here to place bets? However, just as everyone thought of this, Yun Jian's voice sounded again. 10 million for the red Ferrari sports car over there. Yun Jian pointed at the Ferrari in the distance that was ready for the race. Guxian was already waiting in the preparation area. The next round would be between him and Brother Guang. However, when Yun Jian uttered the words 10 million, everyone around her took a deep breath. 10 million? 10 million. Heavens, did they hear it wrong? The people who were lining up to place their bets were either the bosses of some companies or the sons of very rich families, or some workers who were looking for entertainment and didn't have much money in their pockets. Of course, the bets were not divided into big or small, but the highest record of betting here was only a few million. At the very least, the group of people standing in front of her would only bet a few 100,000 at most, with tens, hundreds, or thousands of yuan at most. Originally, the people present felt that it was strange enough that an underage girl like Yun Jian came here to place a bet. But what did she say? 10 million? Was this a joke? Chapter 939. Even if it was 10 million Chinese yuan, it was the fortune of Longmen City's big boss. After all, such an amount was already considered huge in 1999. Back then, those who had more than a million yuan in savings were called millionaires. That was how millionaires came to be. It was different from modern times. If one had a million yuan back then, they would be at the top of the world. What about Yun Jian? She wanted to bet 10 million right off the bat? She even added US dollars at the end? If converted to Chinese yuan, it would be 60 million yuan. Oh my god! 60 million yuan was close to 100 million yuan. If it was 1999, 100 million yuan worth of assets would definitely make the list of the richest people in Longmen City and even the entire Zhe province. Hearing Yun Jian's words, the two men from Guxian nearly fell to the ground in shock. Guxian's two buddies had originally planned to bet a few hundred yuan on Guxian. However, compared to the 60 million yuan that Guxian's younger sister had bet, the men from Guxian stuffed the few hundred yuan back into their pockets quietly. Little girl, the manager of the betting station had never met anyone who bet 60 million yuan in one go. He was stunned by Yun Jian's action and only stuttered after a while. You can register now. Yun Jian did not care about the manager's reaction as she urged him. The staff member's hands trembled, but he accepted the card anyway and said out of goodwill, I'm sorry, but I'm sorry, but I'm sorry, but I'm sorry. Little girl, do you really want to bet on that red Ferrari? The person who's going against the Ferrari is a higher-up in Falcon Hall. People call him Brother Guang. He's famous, and he's never lost since he came to the racetrack. I'll bet on it, Yun Jian said before the manager could say anything else.
All right.
The manager naturally listened to Yun Jian and went through the procedures for Yun Jian with trembling hands. After Yun Jian placed her bet, she took the betting slip and went to the viewing platform. Sister Guxian, I'll buy you a bottle of juice. There's a vendor over there with a cart. One of Guxian's buddies walked up to Yun Jian and flattered her. No need. Yun Jian pursed her lips and smiled at him. Then, she walked into the viewing platform. From the viewing platform, one could clearly see the winding racing track of Yuanbao Mountain on the large screens in front of them. At this moment, the red Ferrari driven by Guxian was already side by side with the Audi sports car driven by Brother Guang. It's starting. The two guys from Guxian hugged each other and screamed excitedly. Yun Jian crossed her arms in front of her chest as she watched the Ferrari and Audi race side by side, until the referee pointed the air gun at the sky and fired. At the same time, he waved the little red flag in his hand. Then, the two sports cars drove out at the same speed as the wind. After just a short while, the red Ferrari sports car had a huge lead over the Audi sports car. The two sports cars quickly disappeared from everyone's sight. Then, they appeared on the large screens in a short while. After a few dozen turns, the Audi sports car was about to catch up. It had to be said that Guxian's driving skills were still lacking. However, the Ferrari sports car's speed allowed Guxian to be one step ahead. There was a turn at Yuanbao Mountain that could avoid the large screens that the audience was watching. At this moment, Brother Guang, who was driving the Audi sports car, looked fiercely at the red Ferrari sports car that he was following closely but could not overtake. Brother Guang suddenly smiled evilly. He suddenly thought of an idea. Chapter 940. At this time, Guxian, who was driving the Ferrari in front of Brother Guang, did not realize that he had been targeted by Brother Guang. He had never considered the possibility of danger before. Car racing was a thrilling competition, and at the same time, there was a certain degree of danger in racing. Especially when racing on a dangerous cliff like Yuanbao Mountain, if the car was not careful, it could crash down the cliff. Yuanbao Mountain was a mountain that was hundreds of meters above sea level. If the car crashed down the cliff, there was only one result for the person, and that was to be smashed to pieces. Therefore, under such circumstances, even if the racer did something to the other racer, no one would know. Brother Guang gave a sinister smile. The corner of the hill was in front, and there were no surveillance cameras at that corner. If he did not slow down and instead sped up, he could catch up to Guxian's Ferrari at that time. Even if he did not knock the Ferrari off the cliff, he could break the brakes of the Ferrari. At this moment, the corner without any surveillance cameras appeared. Brother Guang's lips curled into a sinister smile. He slammed on the accelerator when Guxian's Ferrari began to slow down. There was a sea of people in the spectator stands. Everyone was watching this exciting race, and they were all excited. Suddenly, the two sports cars on the screen turned into the corner of the hill and disappeared from the screen in the next 10 seconds. This was a stage deliberately set up by the organizers to make everyone feel the tense atmosphere of the race. The purpose was to let everyone guess which car would be in the lead after 10 seconds. Therefore, the organizers did not set up surveillance cameras at this corner. Before the Audi sports car disappeared, Yunjian had a nagging feeling that something was off. At the same time, Yunjian felt her eyelids twitch wildly. But she did not think too much about it. 10 seconds later, the Audi sports car rushed out of the corner and took the lead. The commentator, who was standing furthest away, changed his way of explaining. He used a surprised expression to describe what was happening in front of him. Hey, our Audi sports car is actually ahead of the Ferrari sports car. Our Ferrari sports car. After a while, the Ferrari sports car still hadn't rushed out. The commentator wanted to say, our Ferrari sports car actually fell behind at the end and was overtaken by the Audi sports car. But when the commentator said this, the Ferrari sports car still hadn't come out. What happened? Even the commentator felt a sense of lingering fear. Everyone was stunned by the commentator's words. However, everyone quickly reacted. If a sports car didn't appear after so long, and with the speed of a sports car, it was impossible for it to stop in an instant, it could only mean one thing. The sports car fell off the cliff. Or was there some other reason? However, at this moment, the red Ferrari sports car appeared on the screen again, but the difference was that this red Ferrari sports car was on the verge of collapse. It looked like, oh my God, the brakes of the Ferrari sports car are malfunctioning. The commentator quickly realized that something was wrong, and he quickly exclaimed. However, the moment the commentator exclaimed, under everyone's gaze, a thin figure leaped from the viewing platform. The figure jumped directly over everyone's heads from the fourth high step of the viewing platform and onto the flat ground. Everyone present saw this scene. At this moment, everyone was dumbfounded. However, when everyone came to their senses, they saw Yunjian running toward a sports car not far away. A wave of astonishment surged in the hearts of those present. Was she going to save the people in the Ferrari sports car whose brakes were out of control? How is this possible? Chapter 941. Incidents like this where the brakes failed during a race had happened before. Of course, there weren't many incidents where the brakes failed during a race. If such a thing really happened, then the racer was unlucky. Of course, there was another possibility that everyone was well aware of, but they wouldn't express it in words, man-made. Not only was racing a dangerous and exciting game, but there were also many shady dealings that everyone knew about. Of course, everyone knew about these shady dealings. Once it was discovered that the brakes had malfunctioned, the unlucky racer would usually end up dead or seriously injured. This was because something similar had happened at Yuanbao Mountain before, and it had been discovered no less than 5 times. Any racer whose brakes failed would either die or be seriously injured. 2 out of 5 would die, and even if they survived, they would be paralyzed. Therefore, when everyone saw Guxian's Ferrari lose control, their first thought was that Guxian was dead meat. Even if he didn't die, he would be crippled for the rest of his life. But when everyone saw Yunjian run towards the sports car parked not far away, a shocking thought came to everyone's mind. Could it be that the girl who suddenly ran over there wanted to drive the sports car to save the person in the Ferrari whose brakes had failed? This was simply impossible, because the Ferrari had already lost control. It wouldn't stop unless it hit a certain mountain rock. However, if this Ferrari sports car were to crash into some mountain rock, then the person sitting in the Ferrari sports car would definitely be seriously injured, if not dead. However, just as everyone present was certain that Guxian, who was in the Ferrari, was dead for sure, Yunjian ran in front of a Maybach sports car. The Maybach sports car was parked next to the racetrack, and a man in his 30s was standing next to it, wiping the Maybach sports car. Yunjian walked over and sat directly in the Maybach sports car with its door open. She said to the car owner, Lend me your car for a while. Then, Yunjian stepped on the accelerator, and the Maybach sports car shot out like a bolt of lightning. Hey, hey. The man in his 30s, who was the owner of the Maybach sports car, waved at Yunjian, but the car had already been snatched away by Yunjian. The car owner, who was standing in place, was dumbfounded. He swallowed in shock and sighed deeply. Are all girls so fierce nowadays? However, at this moment, from the spectator stands, one could see that Yunjian had already driven the Maybach sports car in the opposite direction of Yuanbao Mountain. Guxian, Brother Guang, and the others were driving along the racetrack, but Yunjian was driving in the opposite direction. Driving in the opposite direction of the track, Yunjian could meet Guxian's Ferrari head-on. Yunjian's Maybach sports car. After that, the spectator stands were filled with the sound of people talking in fear. Heavens, what did that girl want to do? Is she going to save someone? That Ferrari sports car has already lost control. Even if she goes to save someone, she has no chance of winning. I feel like she's going to die. The spectators on the spectators' stands watched nervously as Yunjian disappeared from everyone's sight. Not long after, she appeared on the large screen again. Chapter 942. Of course, everyone present didn't think that was possible. From the screen, it could be seen that the Ferrari sports car was already on a rampage, and it looked like it was about to collapse. Yunjian was driving the Maybach sports car and was rushing in that direction. However, it was hard to say if Yunjian's Maybach sports car would collide with Guxian's Ferrari sports car. Fortunately, it wasn't difficult for the people present to see that Guxian was driving the Ferrari sports car. Although the brakes had failed, the car was still moving forward. It couldn't stop or slow down. However, whether it was a cliff or a rock, he still turned the steering wheel with all his might. If Guxian turned the steering wheel too slowly and fell off the cliff, or hit a rock too quickly, he might die before Yunjian arrived. However, from the big screen, although the Ferrari sports car was out of control, it was still trying its best to turn the direction and didn't give up. In fact, Guxian, who was sitting in the Ferrari sports car, was already sweating. He felt the call of death. When he turned the corner just now, and the car slowed down, Brother Guang directly stepped on the accelerator and rushed up. Brother Guang's rush directly knocked Guxian to the edge of the cliff. Just a little bit, and Guxian would have fallen off the cliff with the car. Fortunately, Guxian grabbed the steering wheel with all his might and didn't let the steering wheel go crooked. F***Sika. Damn it. Guxian groaned hatefully. At this moment, he was walking on the edge of life and death and could die at any time. This wasn't the time to be angry, so Guxian put aside his hatred for Brother Guang and focused on holding the steering wheel tightly. Guxian, couldn't die here like a coward. Yunjian was driving the Maybach sports car at an astonishing speed, turning one mountain road after another. The moment Yunjian turned a corner, the people sitting on the viewing platform shouted in shock. Amazing! At this moment, this group of people was shocked by Yunjian's lightning-like driving skills. Oh my god! Am I seeing things? That girl hadn't even stepped on the brakes since she started the car. This is too amazing. Too frightening. I'm sure this girl is an expert racer. I've never seen such amazing driving skills. The crowd roared and commented. At this moment, Yunjian, who was driving a Maybach sports car, happened to meet Brother Guang, who was driving an Audi sports car to the finish line. Yunjian's car came from the opposite direction of the finish line, so it bumped into Brother Guang's Audi. Yunjian brushed past Brother Guang's Audi, just like that. However, the moment she brushed past Brother Guang's Audi, a murderous look flashed across Yunjian's eyes. Brother Guang was the first to arrive at the finish line without any obstacles. As soon as he got out of the car, he flashed a victorious smile at the camera. He had already sent the crew cut guy and the others to warn Guxian, but in the end, Guxian did not listen and insisted on getting ahead of him. If that's the case, then go to hell. Brother Guang turned his head to look at the large screen in front of him. He thought he would see the scene of the Ferrari sports car crashing into a cliff or hitting a mountain bike and dying. But what Brother Guang saw was this. Yun Jian's Maybach sports car had already collided with the Ferrari sports car. However, just when everyone present thought that Yun Jian was powerless, Yun Jian suddenly stepped on the brakes. Is she crazy? Does she want that Ferrari sports car to hit her and send her flying? She actually wants to use her own car to stop that Ferrari sports car? Someone exclaimed. Chapter 943. She's crazy. She's really crazy. If the Ferrari crashes into her car, both her car and her car will fall off the cliff.
Someone in the know said again.
In spite of it, Yun Jian had already parked the Maybach sports car. On the big screen, Gu Xian's Ferrari was getting closer to the Maybach that was blocking his way. Yun Jian, drive away. Drive away. You'll die. Drive away now. Gu Xian saw Yun Jian's car parked in the middle of the road as well. When he saw that the person in the Maybach was Yun Jian, he bellowed her full name. Gu Xian knew very well that if Yun Jian parked her car in the middle of the road and waited for his Ferrari to crash into her, Yun Jian would definitely be sent flying by the Ferrari he was driving now. Gu Xian did not want to die, but he did not want Yun Jian to die for him either. Therefore, Gu Xian turned the steering wheel, planning to bypass Yun Jian's Maybach and drive himself off the cliff. If he had to die, he would just let him die. It wasn't easy for him to recognize a younger sister. How could he let his younger sister die for him? Gu Xian was prepared to die. Taking a deep breath, he turned the steering wheel and closed his eyes. The Ferrari was about to fall off the cliff. Oh my God! The scene shocked the audience sitting on the viewing platform. The person in the Ferrari drove himself off the cliff to prevent the little girl from sacrificing herself to save him. The scene in front of them touched the hearts of all the audience members. Although they didn't know the relationship between the two people in the Ferrari sports car and the Maybach sports car, the scene just now was enough to shock everyone present. It was over. Everything was over. Die. Go to hell. Brother Guang had already gotten out of the Audi sports car. He grinned menacingly as his eyes were glued to the big screen. He had never seen Yun Jian's face, but he, Brother Guang, was never afraid of anyone in Longmen City. He was a high-ranking member of Falcon Hall, although his status was not as high as Su Zetian and Duan Lei's. If it was someone with a higher status than him, he naturally couldn't afford to offend them. But someone like Gu Xian wanted to surpass him? TSK, dream on! While Brother Guang was thinking about this, Gu Xian had already driven towards the cliff. Everyone in the spectators' stands sat up straight. But at this moment on the big screen, the black Maybach sports car moved. Almost at the same time, the Maybach stepped on the accelerator and slammed into the Ferrari.
TCH.
The sports car brushed against the door of the sports car while the Maybach that Yun Jian was driving brushed against the door of the Ferrari sports car. Sparks flew as both cars brushed past each other. But in the next second, Yun Jian, who was sitting in the Maybach, turned the steering wheel. She pushed the Ferrari back from the edge of the cliff at a frightening speed. Everyone in the spectator stands widened their eyes, watching as Yun Jian pushed the Ferrari back into the lane. The Maybach stepped on the accelerator. Just as she was about to fall off the cliff, she stepped on the accelerator and stepped on it again. However, the Maybach did not stop moving forward after it stepped on the accelerator. The Maybach sports car caught up with the Ferrari sports car in reverse. Under everyone's gaze, the Maybach sports car crashed into the side of the Ferrari sports car. The two cars were close to each other as sparks flew. Finally, at a corner, a horrifying scene occurred. The Maybach made a sudden turn and pressed the Ferrari sports car against the cliff, causing it to crash into the cliff at a speed that did not hurt anyone. At the same time, the Maybach stepped on the accelerator and stopped abruptly. Everything was over. The people in the Ferrari sports car were rescued. Chapter 944. Yun Jian had crashed the Ferrari sports car into the rock at a special angle, allowing Gu Xian to avoid being injured. After Yun Jian forced the Ferrari sports car to stop with the Maybach, she braked and stopped the Maybach as well. Yun Jian's first reaction after she got out of the car was to run to the Ferrari sports car and open the door for Gu Xian to climb out from the passenger seat. At this moment, the spectator stands were completely silent. Everyone who saw the scene was so shocked that they froze. Not a single person was not stunned. Beside Brother Guang stood the crew cut guy and the rest who had tried to threaten Ge Xian earlier. They were dumbfounded when they saw the shocking scene on the big screen, especially Brother Guang, especially Brother Guang. Especially for someone like Brother Guang, who had been in the underworld for so many years and had raced many times, he had never encountered such a situation. The sports car's brakes had malfunctioned, and it could be rescued safely. Yun Jian had used the Maybach sports car to forcefully stop the Ferrari sports car, whose brakes had malfunctioned. As it turned out, the scene had shocked everyone present. Such a feat was unheard of even in the entire Zhe province and country Z, let alone Longmen City. How good must one's driving skills be to be able to pull it off? After all, the Maybach sports car had rescued the Ferrari sports car from the edge of the cliff. The Ferrari sports car had initially planned to fall off the cliff by itself, but what happened in the end? The Maybach sports car had managed to push the Ferrari sports car back from the edge of the cliff. More importantly, the people in the two sports cars were not hurt at all. As the surveillance cameras on the road were installed with reflectors and Yun Jian had walked to the Ferrari sports car with a camera on her back, the screen in front of the spectator stands could not see Yun Jian's face clearly. Yun Jian had already walked to the passenger seat of the Ferrari sports car. She opened the door and said to Ge Xian, "Come out." Ge Xian had yet to recover from the shock of almost falling off the cliff. He was panting desperately, looking like he had been given quite a fright. When Ge Xian recovered, he looked at Yun Jian. The moment he turned his head, he saw the front of the Ferrari sports car had crashed into the rock and was dented. The car was damaged. "Sister, I'm sorry. I damaged your car." Ge Xian lowered his head in self-reproach. "Isn't it just a scratch? The car can be repaired if it's damaged. Mine has been wrecked hundreds of times. It won't make a difference to you this time," Yun Jian said with a lazy smirk with her arms crossed. In her previous life, she drove this car whenever she went out on a mission. This Ferrari sports car had been scrapped hundreds of times, but it was always repaired by her until it was as good as new. Ge Xian's head snapped up when he heard what Yun Jian said, and he eventually got out of the Ferrari sports car under her gaze. The crowd in the spectator stands had all reached the finish line. Yun Jian drove Ge Xian back to the finish line in the Maybach sports car. Everyone in the spectator stand screamed as they watched Yun Jian drive back. Her astounding driving skills just now had made her the god of racing in their hearts. After Yun Jian and Ge Xian got out of the car, two of Ge Xian's buddies came over to help Ge Xian. Yun Jian, on the other hand, went straight to Brother Guang and the others who had fled. Brother Guang and the others were about to flee, but just as they were about to carry Yun Jian away, Yun Jian's voice came slowly. "Where do you think you're going?" Her voice was like a demon from hell. Although Brother Guang had never seen Yun Jian's face, he could not help but tremble violently with Yun Jian on his back. In spite of it, Brother Guang still said arrogantly as he turned around, "Huh? Do you think you're—" Just as he said that, Brother Guang caught sight of Yun Jian's face. Once he saw Yun Jian's face, Brother Guang fell to his knees with a thud. His eyes widened in fear as he stuttered, "Sister Jian, Sister Jian." Chapter 945. Brother Guang had never caught a glimpse of Yun Jian's face from start to end. From Yun Jian's appearance to snatching the Maybach sports car to save Ge Xian, she had never shown her face on camera. Naturally, the audience watching from the viewing platform did not get a clear look at Yun Jian's face as well. It was not until Yun Jian was completely exposed to the public and called out to Brother Guang and his gang who were about to flee that the audience finally got a clear look at her face. Of course, this was not a big deal. Most importantly, Bro Guang had just turned around aggressively with the attitude that he would not stop until he caused trouble for Yun Jian today, but the moment he turned around, Yun Jian's expression changed drastically. When he turned around, Brother Guang had actually knelt down in front of Yun Jian at an even faster speed. What was going on? Why was Brother Guang calling this girl Sister Jian? Sister Jian? Everyone knew that Brother Guang was a member of the mafia. Today, however, he had actually knelt down after getting a clear look at Yun Jian's face. While the audience was surprised, the crew cut guy and his gang were equally terrified. Brother Guang was a higher-up in Falcon Hall. He had never been afraid of anyone since he joined the racing scene. Why was he kneeling down like a weakling when he saw Yunjian today? Brother Guang, what game are you playing? I told you just now that this B** TC8 said my hands were dirty. I didn't F** King kill her just now. I'll do it to her right now. The crew cut guy had a conflict with Yunjian previously, so he held a strong opinion of Yunjian. Seeing Brother Guang kneeling down in front of Yunjian, the crew cut guy did not react at all. He even walked toward Yunjian as if he would lose face if he did not beat up Yunjian. Brother Guang had heard the crew cut guy complain about what happened between him and Yunjian before. If it had been just now, Brother Guang would have been furious when he heard what the crew cut guy said. What about now? Brother Guang was a senior executive of Falcon Hall. He had been in Falcon Hall for a few years and had naturally seen the current boss of Falcon Hall. Obviously, Brother Guang had only seen Yunjian from afar, so he didn't recognize Yunjian. When Brother Guang heard that the crew cut guy was going to mess with Yunjian, he was so scared that he grabbed the crew cut guy. Brother Guang stood up and punched the crew cut guy in front of everyone. This punch sent the crew cut guy to the ground. F***CK, shut your dirty mouth. If you dare badmouth Sister Jian in front of me again, I'll beat you to death. Brother Guang scolded the crew cut guy loudly. In fact, Brother Guang was thinking that he had actually challenged Sister Jian. The person who tried to kill Sister Jian with the car just now? When Brother Guang thought of this, his whole body trembled. Therefore, he thought that he could make up for it before things reached a point of no return. It would be best to push all the blame onto the crew cut guy. In spite of it, Yunjian was not someone who could not see the truth. Watching Yunjian walk toward him, Brother Guang was shaking all over. Sister Jian, it's this guy's fault. You're a magnanimous person. Please don't. Brother Guang trailed off. Yunjian was already striding to Brother Guang and stomped on his chest right in front of everyone, sending him flying several meters away from his kneeling position. The people around them were terrified and bewildered. How dare this girl treat Brother Guang, who is a senior executive of Falcon Hall, like this? Was she not afraid of Falcon Hall's revenge? Just as they thought so, Yunjian's voice rang again. Do you think I'm an idiot? Let me tell you, the Ferrari sports car you just wrecked is my car. The person you want to kill is my brother. Chapter 946. My Falcon Hall? Everyone present latched onto these 4 words. If Yunjian had uttered these words right from the start, no one would have bothered with her. No one was even willing to pay close attention to what Yunjian said. In spite of it, the extent of Brother Guang's fear of Yunjian had forced everyone to pay attention to Yunjian's every word and action. In addition, everyone knew that Brother Guang was a high-ranking member of Falcon Hall. As a high-ranking member of Falcon Hall, it was impossible for Brother Guang to cower like this upon seeing Yunjian unless he had met someone with a higher status in Falcon Hall. He had even knelt before Yunjian just now. You're from Falcon Hall too? Hearing Yunjian say, my Falcon Hall, the crew cut man clambered up from the ground and went to Yunjian, staring at her in disbelief. It was also at this moment that Gu Xian looked at Yunjian with the same stunned gaze. Even when he was studying abroad, Gu Xian knew of Falcon Hall's existence. The current Falcon Hall was something that even the police could not do anything about. Moreover, rumors about Falcon Hall in the underworld had spread all over Longmen City. Gu Xian had heard about it once he returned to the country, and was shocked as well. Judging by Brother Guang's reaction and Yunjian's tone, was Yunjian from Falcon Hall too? Of course, Gu Xian, including those present, would never compare Yunjian with Falcon Hall's boss, slaying Luo. After all, Yunjian looked too young and could hardly convince the crowd. Since you're from Falcon Hall, why haven't I seen you before? The crew-cut man's brows furrowed into a frown that looked as ugly as wrinkles. He questioned Yunjian at the same time. The crew-cut man was Brother Guang's lackey. Even someone of Brother Guang's status could only show half of his face among Falcon Hall's higher-ups. Even Brother Guang had only seen Falcon Hall's boss from afar. Moreover, Yunjian did not enter Falcon Hall's headquarters often. Su Zetian was usually in charge. Now that Su Zetian was heavily injured, Su Zetian's most trusted subordinate, Duan Lei, was in charge. Therefore, it was reasonable that the crew cut man had never seen Yun Jian. You didn't see me at Falcon Hall? Yun Jian frowned slightly. Some of the men and boys in the room felt numb when they saw her ravishing beauty. Hearing Yun Jian's words, Brother Guang, whose heart was tense, and the group of brothers who had just scolded Yun Jian with the crew cut guy all shifted their gazes. Everyone's eyes shifted to Yun Jian. Even Gu Xian and Gu Xian's two buddies were no exception. Yun Jian stood in the same place. Her long black hair flowed elegantly, and her high ponytail made her look full of energy. That's right. The crew cut man was shocked by Yun Jian's aura, but he reacted quickly and looked at her arrogantly. Get the hell out of my way. Damn it. Seeing the crew cut man's behavior, Brother Guang was terrified again. How dare he act arrogantly in front of Falcon Hall's boss? Brother Guang wanted to slap the crew cut man to death. At the same time, Yun Jian's arrogant voice was heard again. You want to see me at Falcon Hall? Are you worthy? Raising her voice, Yun Jian's arrogant words made everyone present feel respect for her. This young lady was so arrogant. Chapter 947. Are you even worthy? Yun Jian's words made the crew cut guy's heart clench. Any man would be angry to be addressed in such a tone, especially a man like the crew cut guy who cared a lot about his reputation. Most importantly, Yun Jian was still an underage girl at Yun Jian's age, yet she stood in front of him and said that. You want to see me in Falcon Hall? Are you even worthy? The crew cut guy was completely enraged by Yun Jian. He did not even care why Brother Guang was so afraid of Yun Jian anymore. Are you *king looking for death? I'm going to kill you today. I'm not human. The crew cut guy was instantly enraged. He ignored Brother Guang's attempts to stop him and insisted on walking towards Yun Jian. The crew cut guy was his subordinate. Brother Guang knew that if the crew cut guy offended Yun Jian today, he would not be far from death. Brother Guang's heart skipped a beat. He was almost scared to death by the crew cut guy's actions. However, just as the crew cut guy was about to approach Yun Jian, Brother Guang's angry roar was heard. Zhuo Ping, you're crazy. She's the boss of Falcon Hall. Do you still want to live here? Zhuo Ping was the crew cut guy's name. Brother Guang called out the crew cut guy's full name. Brother Guang really had no other choice. That was why he had to say it out loud. If he did not say it out loud, Brother Guang was sure that the crew cut guy would definitely go against Yun Jian given his personality. However, going against Yun Jian and the boss of Falcon Hall? It was fine if the crew cut guy had to bear the consequences himself, but the problem was that he would be dragged down by the crew cut guy as well. The words Falcon Hall's boss caused an uproar in the crowd. Yun Jian? Falcon Hall's boss? What kind of joke was this? The legendary Luosha, who turned Falcon Hall into the #1 gang in Jia province in just over half a year? This little girl in front of them? Don't forget that not long ago, Falcon Hall's boss, Rakshasa, had also taken the #1 gang in Jia province, Leopard Pack, under her wing. Half a year ago, Falcon Hall, which was the original Dragon Head gang, was at the bottom of the Jia province's gang rankings. However, Falcon Hall's Rakshasa only spent half a year to turn Falcon Hall into the #1 gang in Jia province. When this news was first spread, it completely shocked everyone. But what did Brother Guang just say? The woman who led Falcon Hall to become the #1 gang in Jia province was actually this underage girl? How is this possible?
What?
How is this possible? Who is she? She's the boss of Falcon Hall. The crew cut guy's feet froze on the spot. He stared blankly at Yun Jian, who was standing not far away. He was so shocked that his jaw almost dropped to the ground. This sudden attack made the crew cut guy's entire body tense up. He stared at Yun Jian in front of him, not daring to take another step forward. The people around them heard Brother Guang's voice clearly, and all of them stared at Yun Jian in shock. No wonder she was so good at driving. They did not expect her to be Falcon Hall's boss. How can it be fake? I saw it with my own eyes. Brother Guang closed his eyes, then collapsed to the ground as if paralyzed. Brother Guang knew that he would not be able to escape from Yun Jian this time. He had almost pushed the brother of Falcon Hall's boss off the cliff. He had even damaged her Ferrari sports car. Brother Guang was sure that he was not far from death, just based on these 2 points. Hearing Brother Guang, a senior member of Falcon Hall, say so, everyone present gasped. Looking at the little girl before them, she was really Falcon Hall's boss, Rakshasa. They did not expect Falcon Hall's boss, Rakshasa, to be so young. Chapter 948. While everyone was still in shock, Yun Jian had already walked up to Brother Guang and the gang. "You guys know Falcon Hall's rules as well," Yun Jian said, her meaning clear. Hearing Yun Jian's words, Brother Guang knew that he was done for. Based on the way Yun Jian dealt with people back then, he knew that they were probably doomed this time. Back then, Flying Passage's boss had sent a sniper to injure Su Zetian severely, forcing him to the brink of death. After Yun Jian rescued Su Zetian by force, she went to Flying Passage alone without a word and annihilated the entire gang. With this incident alone, Brother Guang knew that he was doomed this time. Falcon Hall had made it clear that no one from Falcon Hall was allowed to use Falcon Hall's name to stir up trouble outside. However, Brother Guang had done this many times. He had even used Falcon Hall's name to coerce many beautiful girls and women. He had done such things many times. Back then, Brother Guang thought that it would be fine as long as he took it easy and did not get caught. Never in his wildest dreams would he have thought that he would be caught red-handed by his own gang's boss. I know. Brother Guang was trembling in fear, but he still spoke up fearfully under Yun Jian's pressure. Those who violate Falcon Hall's rules, those who treat Falcon Hall's rules as child's play, have their hands crippled and are expelled from the gang. Yun Jian's eyes flickered, looking like a born king. Her words and actions were like nightmares from hell. Brother Guang pounced to Yun Jian again and knelt down. Sister Jian, please give me another chance. No, please don't cripple my hands. I'll leave Falcon Hall. If his hands were crippled, he would really be a cripple. Brother Guang knew that his expulsion from Falcon Hall was inevitable. This is just one of the reasons. We haven't settled our personal score yet. Yun Jian evaded Brother Guang's kneeling without a trace, her icy expression showing no intention of going easy on him. Personal score? Brother Guang shuddered. Yun Jian's voice rang again with a chilling tone. You crashed into my brother's Ferrari on purpose just now, causing its brakes to malfunction, and he almost lost his life. Also, that scrapped Ferrari sports car is mine. How do you think we should settle this debt? Yun Jian's words made everyone's eyes widen in fear. What? The Ferrari's brakes did not malfunction, but someone else did it? While everyone was doubting the truth of the matter, Brother Guang knelt on the floor and kowtowed to Yun Jian. Sister Jian, I'm wrong. Please let me go, Sister Jian. I won't do it again. Brother Guang, a grown man, was actually kowtowing to Yun Jian.
Who was Yun Jian?
The boss of the province's top boss? She was in the underworld. Even if Yun Jian killed Brother Guang, she would be safe and sound, let alone crippling him. With what he did just now, it would be strange if Yun Jian did not kill him. Let you go?
Sure.
Yun Jian narrowed her eyes and crossed her arms in front of her chest, looking at Brother Guang in front of her. Once he heard Yun Jian say that she could let him go, Brother Guang looked up and gulped before his dark eyes stared at Yun Jian. Really? Before Brother Guang could finish, he was cut off by Yun Jian. Cripple your own hands, and I'll let you go. Cripple my own hands? Why did this sentence come out of this underage girl's mouth so easily and freely? Everyone present was shocked.
Bang!
Yun Jian suddenly threw something at Brother Guang. When everyone saw what it was, they froze in shock. A butterfly knife. Chapter 949. Brother Guang watched as Yun Jian tossed a butterfly knife in front of him, his whole body trembling in fear. Jian, Brother Guang dared not cripple his own hand. He did not have the courage to do so, so he begged for mercy. Yun Jian cut him short and hollered, "Do it!" Brother Guang shuddered. Just as Brother Guang was shivering, Yunjian suddenly stepped on the butterfly knife on the ground and kicked it away. The butterfly knife bounced up from the ground due to the force of her foot. Yunjian flipped her hand and caught the butterfly knife that had bounced up from the ground. "Since you're not doing it, I'll help you." Yunjian smirked sinisterly and held the butterfly knife in a reverse grip, taking a step closer to Brother Guang. "Don't know, I'm wrong." Brother Guang shifted from kneeling to sitting on the ground and shifted his buttocks backward. As he retreated, Brother Guang's body trembled even more. The moment Yunjian raised her hand, Brother Guang shut his eyes in fear. Huff huff. The night breeze was still blowing. The people around them dared not make a sound. Hence, the sound of the night breeze became louder. As the wind blew, Brother Guang did not feel the butterfly knife in Yunjian's hand falling toward him. When he opened his eyes, he saw Yunjian walking away. He sucked in a breath and saw Yunjian and Guxian walking away. Yunjian was still holding a phone in her hand and was telling Duan Lei about the incident. Of course, Yunjian would not let Brother Guang go so easily, but she did not plan to do it herself because it was dirty. When Brother Guang relaxed, he heard Yunjian calling Duan Lei from afar. When he heard himself mentioned, Brother Guang's ears perked up, but he only heard 3 words from Yunjian. "Torture him to death." Brother Guang fainted on the spot upon hearing Yunjian's words. At this time, Yunjian had already arrived in front of the owner of the Maybach sports car that she had just snatched. This Maybach sports car was used by Yunjian to rescue Guxian, and the car door was damaged in many places. Yunjian compensated the car owner with a lot of money. She also sent her Ferrari sports car to the original Ferrari company for repair. In her previous life, every time Yunjian damaged her car, she would bring it to a Ferrari sports car company to be repaired. Yunjian's Ferrari had to be repaired for a period of time, so in the meantime, Yunjian could only drive Ci's Lamborghini. Yunjian, on the other hand, did not mind. She could easily get Ci's Lamborghini if she wanted to. Yunjian contacted the original company of the Ferrari sports car and told them the address. Someone would come to pick it up. It could be considered a one-stop service. By the time Yunjian was done, it was already very late. Guxian felt sorry for Yunjian. She lent her Ferrari sports car to him, and he even damaged it. However, Guxian was relieved when he saw Yunjian's nonchalant look. "Sister, are you really the boss of Falcon Hall?" Guxian had been holding back for a long time, but he finally asked the question. "Yes." Yunjian did not hide it at all. "Does Dad know about this?" Guxian was silent for a moment before he asked.
No.
Yunjian's answer was very straightforward. "Then it's better not to let Dad know about this. Besides, you're still in the military." Guxian paused for a moment before he continued. "Also, don't let anyone with ulterior motives know about this." Chapter 950. Guxian's concern warmed Yunjian's heart. Guxian and Yun-Yi had different feelings. Yun-Yi was the kind of person who would talk about her concern all the time, while Guxian was the kind of person who would never admit that he cared about you. However, Guxian was the kind of person who would never admit that he cared about you. Yet, the more he cared about you, the more he cared about you. Yunjian knew that Guxian was afraid that if her identity as the boss of Falcon Hall was exposed, it would affect her reputation in the military. After all, she was the boss of Falcon Hall. Even though Falcon Hall, which she managed, never allowed its members to bully the weak, others would still think that she was a gangster. This gave off a different feeling. However, Yunjian was not afraid that Gejunjian would find out about her identity as the boss of Falcon Hall. After all, Gejunjian already knew that she was the boss of the Kosha mercenaries, including the Advanced Special Forces. Of course, this group of people kept their mouths shut. This made Yunjian feel relieved. Guxian's 2 buddies also followed Guxian home. Yunjian followed Guxian to Gejunjian's house first. Although it was already very late, when Yunjian and Guxian stepped into Gejunjian's house, they saw Qin Yiru running into the kitchen to bring out 4 bowls of mung bean soup for her, Guxian, and the 2 buddies of Guxian. "You guys are finally back. I've kept this mung bean soup warm in the pot. It's still warm. Eat it while it's hot and go to bed early." You guys are still growing, so take care of your health. As Qin Yuru spoke, she made 2 trips to the kitchen to bring out the 4 bowls of mung bean soup and place them on the long table in the living room. Okay. Yun Jian nodded. Thus, the 4 of them walked over to take the mung bean soup. When Gu Xian drank the mung bean soup, Yun Jian saw an obvious teardrop drop from the corner of his eye, which then fell into the bowl. Gu Xian had never experienced maternal love. However, he never thought that he would experience it from Qin Yuru. Gu Xian's friends all told him that his stepmother was a venomous woman. She would definitely be two-faced in front of Gu Junjian. She would even pretend to treat him well in front of Gu Junjian. However, Qin Yuru gave him a different feeling. Gu Xian did not know why he was so certain that Qin Yuru treated him differently. Perhaps it was because Qin Yuru treated him the same way in front of Gu Junjian? The feeling that Qin Yuru gave people was that kind of mild kindness. Although this feeling was ordinary, it gave people a feeling of happiness and warmth. Thus, Gu Xian cried. However, he hid it very well. Other than Yun Jian, no one else saw his tears. At this moment, Gu Xian made up his mind. He would use his heart to repay Qin Yuru. From now on, Qin Yuru was his mother, Yun Jian was his sister, and Yun Yi was his brother. They were a family. After eating the mung bean soup and returning to Dong Ruan's house, Yun Jian fell asleep immediately. Ce had not returned from an Hun group yet. Although the night without Ce was less warm, Yun Jian could still sleep. The next day, after returning home from her morning exercise with Zhang Xiaofeng and Yun Yi, Yun Jian changed into a clean set of clothes and went to meet Ning Lanlan at the usual place. She did not forget that she had promised to go to the zoo. Yun Jian saw Ning Lanlan standing there from afar. At this moment, there were a few young men and women standing beside Ning Lanlan. However, it was not hard to tell that these young men and women were Ning Lanlan's friends. Seeing Yun Jian walk over, Ning Lanlan grabbed Yun Jian's hand and ran to the side almost at the same time. Then, she whispered to Yun Jian. Chapter 951. Ahem. Yun Jian coughed softly when she heard Ning Lanlan's words. However, before Yun Jian could say anything, another girl called out to Ning Lanlan. Lanlan, what are you whispering to this beautiful big sister behind my back? Just as she said that, a sweet-looking girl with big sparkling eyes walked over from the side. The girl put her arm around Ning Lanlan's shoulder and looked at Yun Jian with a grin. Hi, I'm an Mo, Lanlan's good friend from school. That's my younger sister, Anua. She's a little shy, don't mind her. The girl started introducing herself excitedly with her arm around Ning Lanlan's shoulder. In the end, the girl who called herself an Mo even pointed at a young lady who looked exactly like an Mo. Yun Jian looked over. Her gaze stopped on an Mo and paused for a moment before stopping at Anua, who looked a little shy not far away. Yun Jian raised her brow. It was rare for her to be in the mood. She curled her lips and asked despite knowing the answer. Twins? An Mo and Anua's looks could be said to be carved from the same mold. Ordinary people would not be able to tell them apart at all. However, Yun Jian could tell an Mo and Anua apart with just a glance. Yun Jian was also a top-notch investigator. She could even recognize Peter with his superb disguise back then. It was a piece of cake for her to tell the twins apart. The older sister, an Mo, was obviously more active. When she heard Yun Jian, she put her arm around Ning Lanlan's shoulder and said to Yun Jian, Yeah, I'm the older sister, and she's the younger sister. Hee, what's your name, big sis? And Mo's outspoken personality was rather straightforward. Yun Jian said with pursed lips. Yun Jian. And Mo repeated Yun Jian's words. Then, she looked delighted. Your name is so nice. And Mo stuck her tongue out playfully as she spoke. Is everyone here? Let's get ready to go. At this moment, a gentle-looking boy wearing a pair of rectangular glasses walked over from the side. The boy's looks were not bad, and his skin was moderate. All right, big ice cube, we got it. And Mo stuck out her tongue and teased the boy. After an Mo was done complaining, she turned around and introduced him to Yun Jian. His name is Hani-chen. He's the class monitor of our class. Don't be fooled by his gentle and elegant appearance. He's famous for having no sense of direction in our class. Haha, last time, he even got lost in the park. I really admire him. And Mo grumbled. Yunjian responded with a smile. Ning Lanlan's friends were all her classmates. Ning Lanlan said that she and her good friends often gathered together to go on spring excursions to all kinds of places. When Ning Lanlan borrowed salt from Qin Yuru at the Nilong River barbecue, she had gone with an Mo and the others. At this moment, an Mo and the others welcomed Yunjian. Moreover, when they found out that Ning Lanlan and Yunjian got to know each other because of that one time they borrowed salt, an Mo and the others were dumbfounded. An Mo even exaggerated that she would go to the Nilong River barbecue next time to borrow salt to bring a good friend back. Naturally, an Mo was only joking. Just as everyone was about to leave, a shout came, "Lan Lan." Hearing that the voice was calling Ning Lan turned around. However, when she turned around and saw the person before her, Ning Lan lowered her head shyly and said, "Senior."
Gaming?
Chapter 952. Yunjian did not like being stared at like that. She frowned and walked away discreetly. Shan Zihao had not seen Yunjian for a while since the foreign language competition at Foreign Languages High School. Now that he saw her, he was overjoyed. Lan Lan. Xiao Jiming merely smiled at Ning Lan.
Hi, Yunjian.
Long time no see. Seeing Yunjian walk away discreetly, Shan Zihao's heart was itching. Hence, he walked over to greet Yunjian. He was getting more and more interested in Yunjian. He had been attracted to Yunjian ever since he saw her in school the last time. There was no girl who would not be attracted to his handsome face. This was the reason why Shan Zihao was so interested in Yunjian. Also, Yunjian gave him the feeling that she was too mysterious. When he was talking to Peter, the words that seemed to be unintelligible were attracting his attention. Shan Zihao was sure that he had never paid so much attention to a girl before. Hence, when he saw Yunjian walking away, he rushed up to greet her. "Oh yeah, why are you guys here?" Ning Lanlan lifted her head slightly and glanced at Xiao Jiming. She put away her shy gaze and asked, "Zihao dragged me here. He said we're going out to have fun. I didn't expect to see you guys here." Xiao Jiming reached out to touch his head. He seemed to be confused about the situation. Although Ning Lanlan liked Xiao Jiming a lot, she could not bring herself to like Shan Zihao. Especially when Shan Zihao seemed to be sizing up Yunjian, Ning Lanlan disliked him even more. Ever since Ning Lanlan saw Ce the last time, she felt that Ce and Yunjian were a perfect match. That feeling of wanting to bring the two of them together had completely sprouted. Perhaps Ning Lanlan was different from other girls. If other girls saw Ce, they would probably fight to get into Ce's good books. However, Ning Lanlan was different. Her heart was completely devoted to her senior Jiming. No matter how outstanding other men were, she did not want them. However, when she saw Ce and Yunjian standing together that night, she felt that they were a perfect match. That was why Ning Lanlan wanted to matchmake them. Because at first glance, Yunjian was the kind of person who didn't get aroused easily. "How did you know we were here?" Ning Lanlan shifted her attention to Shan Zihao. She did not hold back when she said those words. It was especially so when Shan Zihao's gaze shifted to Yunjian. However, Ning Lanlan stood in front of Yunjian, preventing Shan Zihao from looking at her. Although Ning Lanlan liked Xiao Jiming, she didn't like seeing Shan Zihao. "Aren't we just passing by?"
Hee.
As he spoke, Shan Zihao unconsciously shifted his gaze to Yunjian. Of course, it was impossible that they were just passing by. He knew someone in Ning Lanlan's group. That person was neither Hani Chen nor the twins and Mo and Nua. "I said so." "So what? Didn't you guys say we can't call anyone?" At this moment, a very arrogant girl with her head held high and a little makeup on her face said in an annoyed tone. As she spoke, the girl even snorted. "Ning Lanlan, you're the only one allowed to call your friends over? Can't I bring my own friends?" The friend that the girl was referring to was probably Shan Zihao. The people who came today were all Ning Lanlin's classmates. There were about a dozen of them. Judging by the girl's tone, she must not be on good terms with Ning Lanlan. Chapter 953. As a matter of fact, the girl named Wan Xiao was very arrogant in class. Judging by her appearance alone, Wan Xiao had a lot of makeup on her face. It was obvious that she was a hooligan. That was the truth. Wan Xiao was a hooligan. Otherwise, how could she know Shan Zaheo from the high school when she was just a junior high student? All right, let's stop talking. I think we should hurry to the zoo. I heard that the entrance fee for the zoo isn't cheap. Once we go in, we must play from morning to night and come out when it's closed. That's not a loss at all. Anemo stepped up to speak up when she saw that the situation had taken a turn for the worse. Anemo was not acquainted with the girl named Wan Xiao. Each trip was organized by their class monitor, Hani Chen. Of course, most of the students who came out to play were those who were closer to Ning Lanlan and Anemo. Initially, Wan Xiao was not going to come along, but for some reason, she suddenly told their class monitor that she wanted to come along. Hani Chen could not possibly reject her. He was the class monitor, and he was the one who organized the students to go out on their own during the weekend. If he rejected Wan Xiao alone, would it not be too obvious that he was being ostracized? Therefore, no matter how much everyone disliked Wan Xiao, they could only think of ignoring her when they came out to play. Therefore, from the very beginning, Wan Xiao was alone and had no friends. Ning Lanlan wanted to scold Wan Xiao back, but since an Mo had spoken, she had no choice but to swallow her anger. Jian, let's go. Ignore some shameless people, humph. Ning Lanlan scoffed softly and pulled Jian away. Xiao Jiming, who was standing on the spot, looked at Ning Lanlan's angry face and smiled faintly. He had always treated Ning Lanlan as his younger sister, so he usually took care of her. The meeting spot was not far from the zoo, so Yunjian and her friends arrived in no time. There was still some distance to the zoo's entrance. Yunjian and her friends were still moving forward. Ning Lanlan was holding Yunjian's hand and pouting her cheeks. She looked like she was really angry about what had happened earlier. The zoo was located in the suburbs, near the mountains. Just as they passed by the foot of the mountain, Yunjian heard a very soft conversation nearby. What the F***, CK? The ticket to that D***M zoo is so expensive. I'm not buying a ticket to go in. Isn't this cheating us of our money? Exactly. I heard that if we follow this mountain path, we can enter the zoo from the back of the mountain. Let's go from here. There's such a thing? Haha, hurry up. Up to this point, it was all male voices. Yunjian frowned slightly. Then a weak female voice said, "Don't be like this. It's wrong to cheat. Get lost. Get lost. What do you know? If you want to leave, then come with us. If you don't want to leave, then go buy your own ticket." You have too much money and nowhere to spend it. We don't have as much money as you do, ha. A furious male voice rang, accompanied by the sound of shoving. However, after a while, a girl ran out crying. This girl had 2 ponytails and looked like a pear blossom in the rain. She looked delicate and weak. Chapter 954. The girl ran very fast with her eyes closed. When she bumped into Ning Lanlan did not feel any pain. The girl's body was soft like a ball of soft cotton. The girl only reacted when she bumped into Ning Lanlan. She lifted her head to look at Ning Lanlan and rubbed her eyes. She said in fear, "I am sorry." Ning Lanlan was a warm-hearted person. When she saw the girl's tear-stained face, she replied generously, "Don't worry, I'm sorry. It's fine. It's just a little impact. I can still take it." As she spoke, Ning Lanlan was curious why the girl was crying like that. As a girl, Ning Lanlan looked at her worriedly. She pursed her lips and asked after a while, "What's wrong? Do you need me to help you?" "I'm fine.
Thank you."
The girl wiped her tears. Then she sobbed for a while and stopped. The girl took 2 shaky steps towards the zoo. Her thin and frail body looked like she was about to fall. Even Ning Lanlan felt sorry for her. She paused for a while. In the end, she could not help but ask, "Hey, are you going to the zoo too?" In truth, Ning Lanlan and the rest had heard the conversation before the girl rushed out from the side. Based on the girl's conversation with the other boys, they could guess what had happened to the girl. Although they had no idea what the girl's relationship with the boys was, they could guess based on the conversation earlier. The boys probably did not want to buy tickets to the zoo and wanted to play in the zoo. The girl felt that it was inappropriate, so she said it out loud. Everyone was well aware of the voices of the boys insulting the girls just now. Faced with Ning Lanlan's friendliness, the girl nodded in the end. Ning Lanlan was quite kind. Seeing that the girl was easy to get along with, she asked tentatively, "We're going to the zoo too. Do you want to come with us?" As she spoke, Ning Lanlan turned to glance at Yun Jian and winked at Yun Jian.
Me?
The girl was surprised that Ning Lanlan would invite her. However, she reacted quickly. She pointed at herself carefully and asked, "Can I?" "Sure," Ning Lanlan said with a smile. "Thank you." The girl's mood improved slightly. Yun Jian stood aside and listened to the girl introduce herself to Ning Lanlan. Ning Lanlan introduced herself and Yun Jian as well. "Hello, you're so beautiful." The girl looked at Yun Jian and added a sentence from the bottom of her heart. Thank you." Yun Jian wiped her red lips and replied generously. Wan Xiao, who was standing at the side, reached out to grab the corner of her clothes. Her expression was ferocious, especially when she saw Shanzaheo looking at Yun Jian with infatuation all the way. She was even more furious. One had to admit that Ning Lanlan was good at making friends. Soon, the girl became familiar with Ning Lanlan. The girl's name was Tang Chi Xian, and she was in a relationship with the boy who had just yelled at her to get lost. However, as time passed, Tang Qixuan found that she had more and more disputes with her boyfriend. Chapter 955. All right, we can buy tickets and go in now. We've been dawdling here for so long. Let's talk about it after we're in the zoo. A ticket costs 35 yuan. Let's fight to stay in the zoo for as long as we can, haha. An MO stood up and said with a grin. The group stopped hesitating when they heard what an MO said. The price of a ticket to the zoo in 1999 was still considered reasonable. The standard of consumption back then was generally low. A 35 yuan ticket to the zoo was considered expensive in the low-income era of 1999. 35 yuan could be compared to 200 to 300 yuan now. That was why the boys just now wanted to enter the zoo from the back of the mountain. Phew, we're finally in, Ning Lanlan said with a chuckle after they paid for their tickets and entered the zoo. What animal are we going to see next? An MO interjected at this moment. Ask Jian. Jian, what animal do you want to see first? Ning Lanlan blinked and turned to look at Yun Jian, asking Yun Jian. Pandas, Yun Jian answered with oppressive lips. Pandas? Haha, great, I like it. Ning Lanlan said, clapping her hands happily. Then, she said excitedly, pandas are our country's first-class protected animals, and I've seen them in pictures before. They're super cute. Ning Lanlan put her hands down and put on a yearning expression. In fact, Ning Lanlan liked pandas very much too. Let's go. Yun Jian grinned. About half an hour later, Yun Jian and her friends went around the zoo. Ning Lanlan and the others went to look for the toilet after taking a stroll. When Ning Lanlan and her friends went to the washroom, only Yun Jian and a handful of her classmates were left standing. Yun Jian waited a distance away from the washroom. Yun Jian, why are you ignoring me? Shanzaheo came over just as Yun Jian was leaning against a willow tree with her arms crossed. Shanzaheo's question sounded like he was denouncing her. Yun Jian's long legs moved slightly. She leaned lazily against the tree and didn't even raise her head. She even closed her eyes. Yun Jian sneered lazily. Why should I care about you? These plain words touched Shanzaheo's heart. Once or twice, Shanzaheo thought that Yun Jian was playing hard to get with him. But he, Shanzaheo, had never failed to get a girl. Shanzaheo saw that Yun Jian was leaning against the willow tree lazily with her eyes closed when everyone else went to the washroom. Her rosy lips looked especially beautiful under the morning sun. Shanzaheo took a deep breath. Yunjian, I like you. As Shanzaheo spoke, he strode towards Yunjian and reached out his hand, wanting to kiss Yunjian forcefully. Shanzaheo felt that many girls wouldn't be able to stand his posture, especially those girls who had been kissed by him. Which one of them wasn't infatuated with him? He, Shanzaheo, didn't believe it. However, before Shanzaheo's hand could touch Yunjian, Yunjian seemed to be conscious with her eyes closed. She turned around and dodged Shanzaheo's lecherous hand. Shanzaheo didn't expect Yunjian to be able to dodge so easily with her eyes closed. By the time he reacted, he had already exerted his entire body's weight and crashed into the willow tree. With a loud bang, Shanzaheo's entire body crashed into the willow tree. He was still shocked that Yunjian could dodge so quickly. Chapter 956. A normal girl would not say something so gory, but Yunjian was never joking when she said it. Slamming into the willow tree, Shanzaheo sucked in a breath when he heard Yunjian's words. Don't joke like that. I know you won't. Even so, Shanzaheo only treated what Yunjian said as a joke. Who did not know how to spout nonsense? It was rare for girls to spit it out. Boys would often boast about how good they were to flaunt their abilities. Shanzaheo only saw Yunjian as a girl who was competitive. Just as Shanzaheo turned around with his words, however, he saw a butterfly knife in Yunjian's hand. Yunjian's grip on the butterfly knife coupled with her cold expression. Shanzaheo tensed up from the threat. Yunjian, this knife is a replica, isn't it? Where did this knife come from?
Haha, it looks like a real knife.
This toy looks like a real one. I can't even tell if it's real or fake. Shanzaheo was still naive enough to think that Yunjian's knife was a toy knife. Yunjian scoffed. At that moment, Ning Lanlan and the others came out of the toilet. Jian, have you been waiting long? Haha. Ning Lanlan came out with Tang Qixuan, and an Mo. Yunjian pressed her lips together and put the butterfly knife back into her pocket without a word. It was then that a person dressed as a cleaning lady ran over from afar, shouting as she ran. Something's wrong. Something's wrong. A few guys came in from the back of the mountain. They came in from the back of the mountain, and it's Tiger's Nest. Go save them. Someone's going to die. The cleaning lady was not saying this to the passers-by, but to the zoo's staff. Her intention was for the staff to run to save the people. They came in from the back of the mountain, and they happened to fall into Tiger's Nest? Yunjian furrowed her brows. There were all kinds of animals in the zoo. No matter whether they were dangerous or not, they could be seen in the zoo. In this zoo, the tiger was released in a tall and large enclosure. In the middle of the enclosure was a huge open-air pit where the tiger rested. At least the zoo here didn't keep tiger in an iron cage. But as long as they didn't fall into this pit, these tiger wouldn't be able to jump out of this huge pit. But after hearing what the cleaning lady said just now, at this moment, Tang Qixuan's heart-wrenching scream rang out. They fell into the tiger's nest? Tang Qixuan's face instantly turned pale. After Tang Qixuan finished speaking, she ran towards the tiger crater, as if she had gone mad. Let's go take a look as well. Ning Lanlan's face turned pale in an instant, but she still suggested. As she spoke, Ning Lanlan led a group of people towards where Tang Qixuan was running. Inside the huge tiger crater, this bunch of tigers who had been caged in the zoo all day had yet to lose their wild nature. These young men who came in from the back of the mountain had no idea that this was the tiger's nest. They only realized it after they came in. However, when a tiger charged over, it was already too late to stop it. Miserable shrieks rang out. One or two of the unlucky young men who were targeted by the tiger were torn to shreds on the spot. When Yunjian and the rest arrived, there were already many workers who were trying to save them. However, when they looked down into the huge crater of the tiger's nest from above, they could see that there were already people who had been torn to shreds by the tiger. When Tang Qixuan saw that her boyfriend was about to be attacked by a tiger, she shrieked and wanted to jump into the huge crater. Yunjian reached out and grabbed her. I'll go. Yun Jian's eyes flickered. Then, without any hesitation, she jumped into the huge crater. Oh my God, is this little girl looking for death? That's the tiger's nest. Someone trembled as he watched this scene from afar. Chapter 957. With a leap, Yun Jian leaped into the giant pit and landed steadily. The scene shocked everyone present and made Tang Qixuan's heart clench.
No.
Come back. This has nothing to do with you. Tang Qixuan was terrified, but when she saw Yun Jian jumping into the tiger's nest for her, she shuddered but still wanted to jump in to save Yun Jian. Tang Qixuan was scared, but she knew that this was her own business. She could not bear to leave her boyfriend, but Yun Jian had jumped in to save her. She could not harm Yun Jian. The giant pit was the tiger's nest, where there were at least 8 to 9 adult tigers. Tang Qixuan was a very timid girl, but she did not want others to sacrifice themselves for her. However, just as Tang Qixuan was about to jump into the tiger's den, Ning Lanlan grabbed her from the side. Don't go either. You'll die if you go.
I'll go save Jian Jian.
Ning Lanlan frowned. She was actually shaking and her palms were sweating from fear. In spite of it, how could Ning Lanlan be willing to watch Yun Jian die? Although she had not known Yun Jian for long and they were not childhood friends, Ning Lanlan was the kind of person who would go through hell and high water for her once she acknowledged a friend. No, Sister Lanlan, this has nothing to do with you. I'll go myself. As she spoke, Tang Qixuan pushed Ning Lanlan away forcefully. It was then that Xiao Jiming stopped both Tang Qixuan and Ning Lanlan. Stay here, both of you. Zaheo and I will go save her. Xiao Jiming then turned to call for Shan Zaheo. Xiao Jiming was different from other guys. Not only was he handsome, he did not like to show off like other guys. Xiao Jiming was a real guy. At this moment, Xiao Jiming was not trying to act cool in front of the girls. He just wanted to save someone. In spite of it, when Xiao Jiming turned to call for Shan Zaheo to go with him, he clearly saw Shan Zaheo shuffling a few steps back. Zaheo, we. Xiao Jiming was stunned. He was about to call for his best friend to go down with him. Shan Zaheo took 2 steps back in fear and interrupted Xiao Jiming. Jiming, down there, our tiger. Tiger, they eat people. Someone's already been eaten. Besides, shouldn't the zoo save people themselves? All of this was an excuse. Xiao Jiming's eyes darkened, but he did not turn back. Shan Zaheo's behavior had disheartened him. Just as Xiao was about to jump down to save the girl, a most terrified shriek was heard.
Ah!
Everyone's attention was diverted by Enmo's shriek. When everyone turned their attention to her, they saw that Yun Jian was already entangled by a tiger. No, Jian Jian. Ning Lanlan cried out and dashed into the pit. 2 steps later, however, Ning Lanlan halted in shock. Everyone's eyes widened as they witnessed a horrifying scene when the giant tiger pounced on Yun Jian. Yun Jian took a step forward and swung the butterfly knife with both hands agilely. The moment the tiger leaped at her, she sidestepped it and swung the butterfly knife into the tiger's exposed abdomen at the same time. The stab was fast, accurate, and ruthless. If she had been a step slower, the person who would have been pounced on would have been Yun Jian. The tiger that was stabbed in the heart spilled blood on the spot and even spurted onto Yun Jian. Yun Jian merely blinked. She did not feel like she had killed a tiger at all. In spite of it, Ning Lanlan, Shan Zaheo, and the others who were standing on top of the pit broke out in cold sweat. Chapter 958. Right before the tiger pounced on Yun Jian, a lot of tourists around them cried out, "Hey! Oh my, this girl is done for. She's courting death. Who can she blame? It's good that she's dead. Serves her right for courting death." However, when Yun Jian killed the tiger with a flip of her hand, the tourists' voices fell silent. Ning Lanlan was stupefied. Shan Zaheo was stunned. Wan Xiao, who was very unfriendly towards Yun Jian just now, was stunned. Han Yichen, Tang Qixuan, Xiao Jiming, and the others were also completely dumbfounded. The moment the blood splattered, Everyone present saw Yunjian's lips curl up into a smile. That smile was like the Grim Reaper from hell. It was as if she was the king of the jungle, a god who ruled over the animals. At that moment, everyone present could not believe their eyes. After all, Yunjian looked delicate and pretty. At first glance, she looked like a normal middle school girl. However, no one expected Yunjian to jump into Tiger's lair and claim that she was going to save him. She was able to stab a tiger to death with a single stab. How fast did one's hand speed have to be able to do this? Everyone at the scene was scared witless. However, the person who was the most frightened was still Shan Zihao. After all, what did Yunjian say to him in the beginning? If he dared to pester her again, she would turn him into a woman. No normal girl would say something like that. Hence, Shan Zihao did not take Yunjian's words seriously at all. Most importantly, Yunjian had waved the butterfly knife in front of him before. However, Shan Zihao did not take it seriously at that time. Shan Zihao even thought that the butterfly knife Yunjian was playing with was just a toy knife.
But now,
Yunjian had used this very butterfly knife to stab Tiger in the heart. Yunjian had stabbed Tiger to death. If this saber was fake, how could it have such a sharp blade? When Shan Zihao thought about it, he felt his whole body trembling. Wan Xiao, who had scoffed at Yunjian earlier, saw Yunjian's actions and said, "She," 3 times in a row. Wan Xiao was so scared that he started to tremble. Even his bones started to tremble. However, at this moment, Yunjian had already run to the other side with the butterfly knife. "Little girl, it's dangerous. Go back." A worker in the huge pit saw Yunjian running in that direction and shouted in alarm. This staff member had just cooperated with his companions in an attempt to capture Tiger, who was attacking people. He saw Yunjian running towards him. Because the worker standing under the giant pit didn't see Yunjian killing Tiger with a single slash, he simply thought that Yunjian was an eyesore, so he didn't hold back when he shouted. However, the moment this group of workers frowned and saw Yunjian from the corner of their eyes, they saw a figure flash past. A few workers were facing the tiger. They were holding stun batons that were specially used to capture tigers and were eyeing the tiger covetously. The tiger had already bitten a few people who had just climbed in from the back of the mountain. It was obvious that one of them did not have long to live. Because his intestines were hanging out from the bite, he looked bloody and lifeless. The workers did not dare to make a move for a long time. After all, the few in front of them were tiger. However, when they came back to their senses, they saw Yunjian rushing towards the tiger with the butterfly knife. Chapter 959. If something happened to the passengers here, the staff would be responsible. Moreover, these young men who climbed over the wall from the back of the mountain were already in trouble. If they didn't rescue them and send them to the hospital, it might not be just one person who would die. Therefore, Yunjian's appearance made these staff members afraid that something would happen to her. More importantly, they felt that Yunjian would cause trouble. Just now, when Yunjian killed the tiger, the people on the viewing platform clearly saw it. However, the staff members standing in the huge pit were like frogs at the bottom of a well. They couldn't see the scene of Yunjian killing the tiger at all. After all, this huge pit covered a large area. There were some large rocks around it. It wasn't easy to see Yunjian's position from there. This little girl, is she here to cause trouble? One of the staff members frowned. Then, he held the stun baton and chased after Yunjian. At this moment, Yunjian was facing 6 or 7 tiger. These tiger seemed to be in a group. When the young men climbed over the mountain from the back of the mountain, these tiger rushed at them together. When the staff members found out about the tiger biting people and came down, the tiger had already bitten off most of the young men. Of course, the most serious one was the young man whose intestines were hanging out from his mouth. Because they were facing tiger, even if a few staff members came down to save people, they would definitely save people while protecting their own lives. Therefore, even if these tiger bit people to death on the spot, if they were to be put in danger, these staff members wouldn't rush up without thinking. Because these young men broke into this place by themselves and they weren't relatives or friends, If these staff members couldn't even guarantee their own safety, how could they risk their lives for someone who had nothing to do with them? As for the staff member who saw Yun Jian running over there, although he said that Yun Jian was here to cause trouble and ran towards Yun Jian with a stun baton, although he was scolding Yun Jian for running over there. In fact, he was doing it for Yun Jian's sake. If this staff member was really just scolding Yun Jian for being a hindrance, he wouldn't have chased after Yun Jian to help her when she was facing 6 or 7 tiger alone. Just as the employee took 2 steps toward her, however, Yun Jian stopped abruptly. Seeing this, the tiger rushed towards Yun Jian as fast as they could. Not only did Yun Jian stop, but she also folded the butterfly knife easily under everyone's gaze and stuffed it back into her pocket. Was she going to fight the 7 to 8 tiger empty-handed? These were real tiger beasts. Everyone present shuddered in shock from Yun Jian's action. Oh my god, is she going to fight the tiger empty-handed? Does she think she's Wu Song? This young lady is crazy. She must be seriously ill. Some of the tourists standing on top of the huge pit had never seen such a strange thing, so they all shouted out in surprise. When encountering such a bizarre situation, as long as it wasn't targeted at them, most people would love to join in the fun and watch the drama unfold. Jian. Ning Lanlan was drenched in cold sweat as she clenched her fists tightly. Just as the tiger pounced on Yun Jian like they were going to tear Yun Jian into pieces, Ning Lanlan's expression changed. Chapter 960. Yun Jian had once ventured into the Amazon forest alone, where venomous snakes and ferocious beasts lurked. She had once single-handedly slaughtered a pack of wild wolves. Why was Yun Jian codenamed Slaying God? Slaying was her blood, and she wanted to become a god. She was someone who had stepped on countless lives and survived by licking the blood from the tip of a blade. She had once fought alone and killed countless high-level secret agents and assassins. Although the 7 to 8 ferocious tigers in front of her looked terrifying, if she, Slaying God, trembled in fear at the sight of these beasts, how could she call herself Slaying God? Slaying God was not afraid of anything. Even if a bullet had pierced through her body, she had stubbornly survived. She was not afraid of the few ferocious tigers in front of her. Awa. The leading tiger was shocked by Yun Jian's murderous aura. It paused violently and howled. The tiger's brutality was not to be underestimated. It would never forgive an outsider who had mistakenly entered its territory. Even if this tiger had been reared in the zoo for a while, its wild nature could not be ignored. After a pause, the leading tiger howled again. Then, it seemed to be giving orders to the few tigers behind it. The few tigers understood the order and charged toward Yun Jian together with the leading tiger. The real battle had just begun. Yun Jian smirked. She wiped her red lips and revealed an eerie smile. In the next second, everyone saw Yun Jian's silhouette flash. She charged toward the few tiger at lightning speed. Awoo! The tiger howled and ran toward Yun Jian enthusiastically, until Yun Jian and the few tiger were right in front of them. Yun Jian was running when she suddenly leaped and stomped on the head of the first tiger. Seeing this, the other tiger turned around and tried to save the tiger whose head had been stepped on by Yun Jian. The tiger whose head had been stepped on by Yun Jian struggled with all its might. It even lifted its head and tried to bite Yun Jian's anklet. However, the moment the tiger lifted its head, Yun Jian did a flip and landed on the ground. She reached out and grabbed the tiger's hind leg. In the next second, she lifted the tiger up and flung it out as fast as she could. After more than half a year of training after her rebirth, Yun Jian's physical fitness was now very outstanding. Although the tiger was a tiger, Yun Jian flung it with a flip of her hand. Bang! After the first tiger was thrown out, it fell heavily to the ground. The tiger didn't react for a while. The few workers were completely dumbfounded. The worker who had scolded Yun Jian earlier was smarter. He quickly ran over to the tiger and used the stun baton to knock it out. Yun Jian used the same method to avoid the tiger's attack. At the same time, she grabbed the tiger's hind leg and flung the tiger out. The tiger was flung to the ground one by one. It took a long time for them to regain their senses. The workers were scared silly, but they reacted quickly and knocked the tiger unconscious with a stun baton one after another. The people standing on the huge pit were stunned, especially Sean Zaheo's face. It couldn't be described as ugly. It was only when Yunjian had flung out the last tiger and the workers had knocked out the last tiger that she revealed a smile. At this moment, small beads of sweat had appeared on Yunjian's forehead. However, when the morning sun shone on the girl's body, it made her look exceptionally delicate and pretty. This was completely different from when she had stabbed the tiger to death. Chapter 961. When all the tigers were knocked out, the staff locked them up in metal cages before sending the rescued lads and the lad whose intestines were bitten to the hospital. The incident was not over yet, but even so, it had nothing to do with Yun Jian anymore. Tang Qishuan had already followed them to the hospital in tears. Before she left, she asked for Yun Jian's contact number, saying that she had to thank Yun Jian no matter what. Yun Jian did not mind. After sending Tang Qishuan and the others away, Yun Jian met up with Ning Lanlan and the others. "Jian Jian, are you okay?" Ning Lanlan was nearly scared to death by Yun Jian. She rushed up to hold Yun Jian's hand and checked it carefully, only letting go when she was sure that Yun Jian was fine. "Phew, I was scared to death just now." Ning Lanlan sighed in relief. "Are you guys still going with her? She just killed Tiger. That's a living life." Wan Xiao complained at this time. "Wan Xiao, shut up. My Jian Jian is doing what's right." Ning Lanlan was pissed off when she heard Wan Xiao's voice, especially when she had to say something like that to Yun Jian under such circumstances. Wan Xiao was gagged, but she spoke up indignantly. Before Wan Xiao could finish, however, Han Yichen cut her off. "All right, that's enough. It's fine as long as she's fine. Let's keep going." Even when something like this happened, it did not dampen the group's mood to have fun. Han Yichen was the class leader after all, so his words carried some charisma. At least, Wan Xiao kept her mouth shut when she heard him. Just as Yun Jian was about to leave with the group, a man's voice came from behind. "Young lady, hold on." Yun Jian remembered the voice. It was the staff member who scolded her for being a troublemaker in the pit not too long ago, but was kind enough to rush up to save her with a stun baton. The good and bad of a person was not determined by their appearance but their heart. Those who spoke harshly were not necessarily bad. Just like this staff member, who called out to Yun Jian. His words were harsh, but compared to the other staff members, he was the only one who rushed up to help when he saw that Yun Jian was in danger. Yun Jian turned to look at him. "Young lady, thank you for just now. If it weren't for you, we wouldn't have been able to save them so quickly." The man scratched his head and smiled at Yun Jian. Yun Jian smiled and replied, "You're welcome." "Huh, have fun today then." The man told Yun Jian and the others with a grin. Yun Jian nodded and continued to play with Ning Lanlan and the others after that. The Zhu Yun and Yun, Yun and Yun and Yun, Yun and Yun. They strolled from morning to afternoon, and finally, they sat down in a place to enjoy the cool air. "I'm going to the washroom." Wan Xiao stood up with a somber expression. Before she left, she gave Sean Zaheo a shove with an expression that said, "I'll tell on you if you don't come." No one saw the small gesture, but Yun Jian did. Yun Jian pressed her lips together, but did not pay much attention to it. After a while, Sean Zaheo got up and left using the excuse of going to the washroom as well. "You guys stay here for a while. I have something to talk to Jian Jian about." Suddenly remembering something, Ning Lanlan went over to pull Yun Jian's hand and scooted into the forest beside them. She wanted to ask Yun Jian about some of the personal things between girls. Hence, Ning Lanlan pulled Yun Jian to a spot far away from the rest of the group. "Jian Jian, Ning Lanlan was about to speak. A faintly discernible moan could be heard. Yun Jian's gaze darkened while Ning Lanlan was startled. Nevertheless, her curiosity got the better of her. When Ning Lanlan pulled Yun Jian over and saw the two people doing unspeakable things, her eyes nearly popped out of their sockets from the shock. Chapter 962. No one suspected anything when Wan Xiao and Shan Zihao left just now. After all, both of them were indeed walking in the direction of the toilet. However, they did not return even after a long time. However, because everyone had walked to many places and seen many animals in the morning and afternoon, their legs were extremely sore and numb. One could even say that their backs were aching. Hence, now that they finally sat down to rest, no one was willing to stand up and continue playing. Hence, it did not matter if it took a little longer. Everyone could afford to wait. However, Ning Lanlan and Yun Jian did not expect Wan Xiao and Shan Zihao to be hiding in the woods and doing such a thing. There were many trees in the woods here. If there were people standing in the woods, they would not be able to see them from the roadside. Naturally, this made it convenient for Wan Xiao and Shan Zihao, a pair of thirsty man and woman. Wan Xiao and Shan Zihao were doing such unspeakable things with their backs facing Ning Lanlan and Yun Jian. Wan Xiao was wearing a miniskirt today, so it was convenient for her. However, Ning Lanlan could never have imagined that she would witness such a hot scene when she only wanted to pull Yun Jian out for a private conversation. It was no wonder she did not inform Shan Zihao. Shan Zihao knew that they were coming to the zoo today. Why would Wan Xiao, who had never participated in any of their activities, make an exception to join them today? Ning Lanlan nearly shrieked when she witnessed the scene, but Yun Jian covered her mouth in the end. Leaning against a big tree, she could only hide herself with the help of the tree. Zihao, do you like that girl? Wan Xiao panted and asked Shan Zihao. Her? I'll get my hands on her sooner or later. Shan Zihao banged Wan Xiao with all his might. His eyes were bloodshot. Ever since he saw Yun Jian, he realized that he was infatuated with Yun Jian. He was so in love with her that he could not be saved. Especially when he saw Yun Jian's nimble movements just now, his admiration for Yun Jian deepened. Looking at Yun Jian's beautiful body shuttling through the group of tiger, Shan Zihao had an impulse to immediately press her down. And just now, after Yun Jian killed the first tiger, why did she put away her knife and fight with the tiger empty-handed? She even threw the tiger out so that the staff could knock it out and lock it in the iron cage? That was because it was impossible for Yun Jian to kill all the tiger in this place. After all, this was a zoo. Killing in a zoo was illegal. More importantly, if there were no tiger in the zoo, would it still be called a zoo? From this point, Shan Zihao felt that Yun Jian was a very attentive girl. This was something that he greatly appreciated. Thinking about Yun Jian's beautiful body, Shan Zihao pounded Wan Xiao again and again. Wan Xiao liked him, and he was a normal man. Of course, he had a normal way of venting. However, even at this moment, he could not forget about Yun Jian. As Shan Zihao thought about it, he reached his hand into Wan Xiao's chest and grabbed it hard. He tossed and turned. Yun Jian and Ning Lanlan heard what they were doing from afar. Especially Ning Lanlan. She covered her mouth and left the little forest with Yun Jian in horror. Hey, you guys are done whispering to each other and back so soon? An Mo asked with a grin when she saw Yun Jian and Ning Lanlan coming out of the little forest so quickly. Yun Jian looked as if nothing had happened. Ning Lanlan, on the other hand, was clearly frightened. Chapter 963. Xiao Zhiming went over to ask when he saw Ning Lanlan's odd expression. Senior Zhiming, I'm fine. Ning Lanlan did not even look at Xiao Zhiming this time as she dragged Yun Jian away in a daze. Ning Lanlan was not bothered by what happened just now. She was usually frivolous, but what happened just now was hard for her to accept. Shan Zihao usually acted like he had no other choice but to have Yun Jian. Ning Lanlan did not like Shan Zihao as a person, but it was not to the extent that she detested him. However, Shan Zihao and Wan Xiao's behavior just now had completely overturned Ning Lanlan's understanding, and she could not accept it all of a sudden. How could people be like this? Shan Zihao said that he liked Yun Jian, but with Wan Xiao, most importantly, Shan Zihao was her senior Zhiming's best friend. Ning Lanlan did not know how to tell her senior Zhiming about this. Xiao Zhiming's gaze dimmed when he saw Ning Lanlan pulling Yun Jian away. He was a gentle and refined person, but he was actually a more observant person. His mind spun, and he immediately thought of why Shan Zihao and Wan Xiao were not back yet. In spite of it, Xiao Zhiming did not think too much about it since the people there were more normal teenagers. Ning Lanlan pulled Yunjian to the side and told Yunjian softly once they were there. Jian, if that Shan Zihao dares to pester you again, I'll definitely kill him for you. Ning Lanlan clenched her fists as she spoke, looking like she really wanted to kill Shan Zihao. Ning Lanlan had already recovered from her shock, but she was furious at Shan Zihao for having designs on Yunjian. Yunjian grinned, looking at Ning Lanlan's adorable face due to her anger. The zoo is closing soon. Let's go. It was already past 4 in the evening. The zoo here closed at 4:30 p.m. But Wan Xiao and the others aren't back yet? NMO asked in surprise. Then, NMO puffed up her cheeks and said strangely, "It's so strange. It's almost 40 minutes. Why aren't they back yet? I think we should just ignore them and go on our own." Humph. Ning Lanlan suddenly spoke up and took Yunjian's hand to lead her to the entrance of the zoo. I think so, too. I can tell that Wan Xiao and that man aren't good people. Let's leave on our own. NMO also grumbled, then called for everyone to leave first. Xiao Zhiming wanted to stay for a while, but Ning Lanlan persuaded him to leave in the end. The few of them had just staggered to the entrance of the zoo when a panting male voice came from behind them. Why did you leave on your own? I've been searching the garden for a long time. Shan Zihao had caught up. Wan Xiao was also there. At this moment, the redness on their faces had not subsided, but looking at their faces, it was as if nothing had happened. Shan Zihao came up to Yunjian as he spoke and stared at Yunjian's exquisite face that he yearned for day and night. Shan Zihao's heart itched. Recalling Wan Xiao's body just now, he invited Yunjian, "Yunjian, do you want to go karaoke tonight?" You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.